Chapter 205. If Xinyu wanted to do this, he didn't need to do it himself. He just needed to give the order, and his subordinates would do it beautifully. After returning to the palace, everything was back on track. With Shang Junlin's order, no one dared to bother Xinyu with the election. Because it involved the previous dynasty, the focus of the ministers was gradually shifted. When the previous emperor was in power, there were many suspicious cases left behind. The Lin family was only one of them. The other problematic cases that were implicated by the Lin family should be overturned as well. The ministers were unsure of Shang Junlin's thoughts. How should we deal with the Shi family and the Yun family that were implicated by the Lin family? They were implicated because they spoke up for the Lin family. Now that we have to clear the Lin family's name, these families naturally need to be dealt with as well. What did the Prime Minister and official Feng say? The two officials have already gone to the palace to seek an audience with His Majesty. Let's deal with the matters at hand first. As for how to deal with these families, we'll talk about it when the two officials return. After reaching an agreement, the room fell into a new round of bustling. When the Prime Minister and Feng Jun requested an audience, Xinyu happened to be in the imperial study. After listening to the two's narration, Xinyu didn't speak. It could only be said that the previous emperor had committed too many sins. A good situation was played out like this. These days, Xinyu had read a lot of ancient books. Before the previous emperor ascended the throne, before the previous emperor's temperament changed, the development of De Huan was very good. If it wasn't for the previous emperor's pretentiousness and allowing traitors to harm the loyal, De Huan wouldn't have been defeated. What does you think? When Xinyu came back to his senses, Feng Jun and the Prime Minister were already gone. Only he and Shang Junlin were left in the imperial study. What the Prime Minister and the others said just now, does you think that we should deal with it again? Isn't this a question for Your Majesty to consider? Why are you asking me? Xinyu blinked and didn't answer directly. You was distracted just now. Now you don't even want to answer my question? Shang Junlin pinched the soft flesh on his cheek. I didn't. Xinyu wanted to cover his face. Your Majesty, don't pinch me. It hurts. Xinyu's so little strength and it still hurts? Shang Junlin released his hand and used his fingertips to rub the area where he had just pinched. It was a little itchy. Does Your Majesty want to reopen the trial? Xinyu asked. The Lin family's matter involves a lot of people. If we really want to look into it, many of the ministers in the court will be implicated. They may not have done anything, but their clansmen may not. If there's nothing wrong with these ministers and they've been working diligently for the great Huan dynasty, Your Majesty can let the matter rest. The connections between the aristocratic families were not small. It was like a huge net, and everyone was caught in it. After the final discussion, based on Shan Yu's suggestion, Shang Junlin set a precedent for the Lin family's incident. Many ministers in the imperial court heaved a sigh of relief. With a precise order, Feng Jun moved even faster. In the morning court, Feng Jun knelt down with the evidence in his hands. Your Majesty, after investigation, the letter that the previous emperor judged the Lin family to be guilty of treason was forged. The real letter was written by General Lin's adjutant. The other evidence was also prepared by the adjutant himself. General Lin's adjutant was someone who had been following him for a long time. He was very trusted. If the adjutant hid these things, it would not be suspected at all. As for the letter, the adjutant had been by General Lin's side for many years and was very familiar with his handwriting. It was not difficult to imitate. The relevant evidence and witnesses were found by Gu Huai after many years of hard work. After Feng Jun took over the case, Gu Huai took out the evidence. Although there were still many doubtful points, it proved that the Lin family did not collude with the enemy and commit treason. Gu Huai has so much evidence in his hands. In the pavilion, Xinyu poured a cup of tea for himself and Shang Junlin. He has been secretly investigating for so many years. He already has enough evidence in his hands. He did not take it out before because he wanted to test my attitude. Shang Junlin picked up the teacup. Now it seems that he trusts Your Majesty very much. He trusts you. If not for you, he would not have taken out all these things in one go. After skipping the testing step, everything progressed quickly. Before taking out the evidence, Gu Huai privately asked to see Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin did not lie. If not for Shunyu, Gu Huai would not have let down his guard so quickly. Master, why did you give them all the evidence? Under the night sky, the man in black half knelt in front of Gu Huai. My brother trusts Gu Jun very much, so I decided to trust him this time. Moreover, I did not reveal everything. Gu Huai knew that he was gambling. He had been gambling his whole life. Fortunately, he did not lose this time. Xinyu had saved Imperial Physician Gu's life. No matter what the reason was, he was grateful. He did not dare to imagine what would happen to him if Imperial Physician Gu had lost his life because of the disputes of the previous dynasty. He had nothing, only his brother. Now that his identity had been exposed, instead of hiding and testing, it was better to end the battle quickly to avoid any more problems. The moon tonight was a crescent moon. Just like that night, he had lost everything. After tossing and turning for a few years, he was picked up by Imperial Physician Gu again. He had a home again. How is the investigation of Fei Ming? Replying to Master, this subordinate found that Spring Pavilion secretly sold a batch of Fei Ming to the outside world. Forgive this subordinate for being incompetent and not being able to find out the identity of the buyer. It's not your fault. At that time, no one knew that Fei Ming had other effects besides being an aphrodisiac. Epidemic? How laughable. Why did it have to be the Lin family and the Lin family army who contracted the epidemic? Some truths were deliberately hidden. For example, the true cause of the Lin family's death and the true reason for the Lin family army's defeat were not because they wanted to lose to the enemy. They were just holding on. How could they defeat the enemy, who came prepared and knew all their weaknesses? There were many things that Gu Huai did not know in his early years. Over the years, he had taken in the old subordinates of the Lin family and pieced together the truth bit by bit. The more he understood, the angrier he became. He sent the evidence he found to Feng Jun, but only a part of it was sent. However, this part was enough. It was enough to prove to the world that the Lin family had died unjustly. It was enough to strip the Lin family of the crimes that should not have been committed. General Gu, please wait. After the morning court, Gu Huai was stopped by someone. He stopped in his tracks. Minister of Revenue, I called you to ask you some questions about the Lin family. Could you spare some time to talk in private? Gu Huai did not know why the Minister of Revenue wanted to talk about the Lin family, but he did not refuse. General, have you heard of the Min Pao? The Minister of Revenue asked after taking a seat. I have. Gu Huai was stunned. He did not expect the Minister of Revenue to suddenly mention this. It's like this. We want to know about the Lin family through the Min Pao. There are some details that we hope the General can clarify for us. So it's about this matter. Minister, if you have any questions, just ask directly. Gu Huai knew about the Min Pao, and he knew that the Min Pao almost dominated the direction of public opinion. He had read a few issues out of curiosity and felt that the Min Pao was indeed in existence that could represent the attitude of the imperial court. The two talked for a long time. A few days later, the Min Pao published the Lin family's matter. The Lin family army might not be very familiar to the younger generation, but to the older generation, it was an existence that could be heard in great detail. So the Lin family was framed by scoundrels? After so many years, the Lin family's injustice has finally been cleared. My husband's spirit in heaven can also rest in peace. This Annie's husband is, I used to be in the Lin family army. This old woman has endured until now just to wait for the day when the imperial court is willing to give them justice. Finally, I have waited until the end of my life. Since the founding of Dahuan country, the Lin family has shouldered the heavy responsibility of guarding the country for the emperor. However, they have met with such an end. People's hearts are really not what they used to be. Fortunately, His Majesty is willing to overturn the case for the Lin family. His Majesty is really a good ruler. He thinks about Dahuan and the people in all aspects. After the Lin family's matter was revealed, the streets and alleys were all talking about the Lin family. After several reversals, Shang Junlin's reputation had become extremely good. The people spontaneously attributed the credit to him. In the imperial palace, Xinyu listened to Mu Shi talk about the situation outside. Mu Shi, young master, you don't know how good His Majesty's reputation is now among the people. Everyone says that it is the blessing of several lifetimes to have met such a good ruler. Xinyu. The main reason is that the previous emperor did too many wrong things. His Majesty just corrected these mistakes. Mushi. If it were up to me, young master also contributed greatly. If it weren't for young master, His Majesty might not have cared about these things. Xinyu. What are you saying? Don't say it again in the future. Mushi. Young master is protecting His Majesty. I know. I promise I won't say it again in the future. Xinyu put down the book in his hand. Isn't it time for His Majesty to come back? As they were talking, Shang Junlin came in with eunuch Ming and the others. Mushi lowered her head and smiled secretly. What are you talking about? Why do I hear a you calling me? Shang Junlin lifted his robe and sat beside Shun Yu. I'm talking about how popular His Majesty is. Shun Yu admitted directly. Because of the Lin family? Shang Junlin raised his eyebrows slightly. Yes. Has His Majesty also heard about it? Shun Yu tilted his head and rubbed Shang Junlin's shoulder. The Minister of Revenue even specially went to Gu Huai for this matter. He asked for some details and wrote them in the newspaper. Shang Junlin stroked Xin Yu's forehead. Xin Yu raised his head. Is Gu Huai really a member of the Lin family? Didn't the Lin family all? Shang Junlin nodded. At that time, there was a mole in the Lin family. After Madame Lin's wet nurse found out, she swapped the identity of her child with Madame Lin's child at the last moment. Then, she sent the child out of the residence through a servant. Just as this was done, something happened in the Lin residence. The wet nurse didn't have time to tell anyone. So that's why everyone thought that the Lin family didn't have any descendants. Xinyu touched his lips. Gu Huai has been investigating the incident all these years. He cares so much about Fei Ming. What role did Fei Ming play in this incident? Gu Huai refused to say, but the hidden dragon guards found out that the incident that happened to the Lin family seemed to be related to Fei Ming. At that time, the Lin family was falsely accused of colluding with foreign enemies. Many people in the imperial court spoke up for the Lin family. Originally, this matter shouldn't have been concluded so early. However, no one expected that the 100,000 Lin family soldiers would be defeated by 20,000 enemies. Moreover, they were completely defeated. Because of this incident, the Lin family was accused of colluding with foreign enemies. According to the strength of the Lin family soldiers, they should be able to fight against 200,000 enemies. How could they be defeated by a mere 20,000 enemies? There must be something hidden in this incident. Xinyu thought about what happened in his previous life and continued. Did the Lin family soldiers act strangely at that time? What if the Lin family soldiers were already at the end of their rope? Chapter 206. Xinyu asked this because he suddenly thought of another use of Fei Ming. Someone deliberately used it to create an epidemic. In his previous life, Xinyu had personally experienced this purgatory scene. Since someone used Fei Ming to create an epidemic, then what about this life? Gu Huai had been investigating Fei Ming all this time. Did he know something? All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. Xinyu knew that if he wanted to confirm this point, directly asking Gu Huai was the fastest way. Xinyu, Your Majesty, can you let Gu Huai enter the palace? Shang Junlin, does you know something? Xinyu, the Lin family army's defeat is too strange, and Gu Huai is also investigating Fei Ming. Your Majesty, do you still remember what I said about Fei Ming before? There is a new drug made from a mixture of drugs that can make people show signs of being infected with the disease. I suspect that the Lin family's defeat is related to Fei Ming. Gu Huai's true identity was not announced to the public for the time being. Because of the Lin family, he had become the focus of attention of the court officials during this period. There were all kinds of visiting cards, and there were countless people who wanted to be on good terms with him. There were also many aristocratic families who liked his identity and appearance and wanted to betroth their daughters to him. The latter were all rejected. Xiao Huai, don't you want to marry a well-educated woman? Imperial physician Gu asked as he put the medical book back. Brother, you want me to marry? Gu Huai's hands paused. You have grown up, so naturally you should have your own family. Gu Huai's hand holding the book tightened. Just as he was about to say something, there was a knock on the door. It was the people from the palace. Gu Huai went out for a while and came back after a while, saying, Brother, I'm going to the palace. The emperor had summoned him, so he could only go. Gu Huai was brought to the imperial study by a little eunuch. "This subject greets your majesty, your majesty." Gu Huai bowed when he saw the two people. "There's no need to be so courteous. Men, prepare a seat." A eunuch brought a chair over, and Gu Huai sat down. "Today, I summoned you to the palace because I want to ask you something about the Lin family. To be precise, I want to ask you about the Lin family's army." Xinyu put down the teacup and said, Gu Huai was used to the way Xinyu and Shang Junlin interacted with each other. "What would you like to know?" "I want to know, back then when the Lin family army was defeated, was there a hidden reason? Is this secret related to Crimson Dream?" Noble Lord is wise and observant. There is indeed a hidden story behind this matter. This subject saved a cook who used to work in the Lin family army years ago. He told this subject that the Lin family army was in a bad state before they left for war. It was as if they had contracted some kind of illness. However, no one reported such a big matter, or perhaps it was suppressed by someone. Since this matter had been guessed, Gu Huai no longer concealed it. "Why didn't you tell Fang Jun about this matter?" Shang Junlin frowned. "Because this subject doesn't have any conclusive evidence. That cook died not long after he was saved. Apart from this person, this subject couldn't find any other witnesses related to that matter." Gu Huai knew that official Fang was a good official who enforced the law impartially. He had already told official Fang all the evidence in his hands. As for the rest, he wasn't completely sure. "This subject has been secretly investigating for so many years, but I have never found out who did this. All the clues have been cut off cleanly." This subject thought that rather than saying it out loud and inadvertently alerting the enemy, it would be better to continue investigating in secret. When you propose to reverse the verdict for the Lin family, you have already alerted the enemy. If the person who did this is still alive, they will definitely be vigilant and even take action. If you don't say anything, you will only put yourself in more danger. This subject understands. You want to use yourself as bait to fish out the person who acted against the Lin family? But have you ever thought that that person might not be alive anymore? Xin Yu's voice was slightly deep. Too many things had happened since the Lin family's incident. Just when Shang Junlin ascended the throne, he executed many people in the imperial court. Perhaps the person who acted against the Lin family was one of them. This subject didn't think it through. Until now, you still don't want to tell the truth? You already have a suspect in your heart, don't you? Xin Yu supported his chin, as if he didn't know how much his words had struck Gu Huai's heart. This subject does have a suspect, but this subject can't say it. This subject doesn't have any evidence. Even if your majesty is willing to believe this subject can't implicate your majesty because of this matter. I hope your majesty and your majesty can give this subject some time. This subject will definitely find the evidence. At this point, Xinyu couldn't force Gu Huai to say anything more. After Gu Huai left, Xinyu leaned on Shang Junlin and asked, "Your majesty, who do you think is the person who did this? Could it be the late emperor?" It shouldn't be. If he wanted to kill someone, he could just pick a reason to do so. There was no need to do so. Many people were implicated in the Lin family's case. With Shang Junlin's orders, these people were dealt with according to how they should be dealt with. Fortunately, after Shang Junlin ascended the throne, there was a great change of officials in the imperial court, so it didn't affect the officials who were still in office. The aristocratic families were busy dealing with this matter, so they didn't have time to care about what happened among the people. Taking this opportunity, under the instructions of Xin Yu and Shang Junlin, the movable type printing was further promoted. Not only in the capital, bookstores and other places also learned this method. By the time the aristocratic families reacted, they couldn't easily intervene in this matter. At this point, how could they not realize that Shang Junlin was involved in this matter from the beginning to the end? His Majesty is really good at scheming. He used the Lin family's case to divert attention and catch us off guard. The officials who were on good terms with the aristocratic families gathered together to discuss this matter. Are we just going to let it go? If this goes on, what advantages will the aristocratic families have in the future? What else can we do? What can we do? Why should we go against him openly? Not to mention that the imperial court is now under his control. Even if it was a few years ago, how many people who went against him had a good ending? His Majesty will not stop at what he wants to do. Let's wait and see. The next thing will only be more unacceptable to the aristocratic families. With the deepening of the Lin family's case, more and more inside information was unearthed. The officials who were wronged because of this matter were overturned. Every day, there would be new developments about this matter in the people's newspapers. After discussion, the imperial court would give a certain amount of compensation to these people. Although the damage caused was irreparable, it would make up for it. When Xinyu woke up from his afternoon nap, Mushi brought him the snacks he wanted. Young master, Yinghua sent back a message. Xinyu was not fully awake, and his voice was nasal. It's from the northern desert. Mushi put the snacks on the table, took out a secret letter, and handed it to Xinyu. When Jiang Huiqing went to the northern desert alone, Xinyu sent people from Yinghua to follow him. After several months, Yinghua sent back a message. Xinyu opened the secret letter and read it one by one. The letter wrote about the arrangement and information of Yinghua in the northern desert, as well as the progress of Jiang Huiqing's case. After arriving at the northern desert, Jiang Huiqing contacted a minister according to the people De Huan left in the northern desert. After being appreciated by the minister, he was recommended to the third prince, who had the power to compete for the throne. After becoming the third prince's advisor, Jiang Huiqing helped the third prince to win the power struggle against the second prince. He was fiercely suppressed by the second prince. The third prince was in a good mood and promoted Jiang Huiqing to a higher position despite the opposition. Later, Jiang Huiqing completed several difficult tasks for the third prince and became the third prince's trusted aide. By the time the secret letter was sent, Jiang Huiqing already had a position beside the third prince. He was highly valued by the third prince, and the third prince would also pay attention to his suggestions. When Xinyu received the news, Shang Junlin naturally received it too. The hidden dragon guards disguised themselves as servants and followed Jiang Huiqing around. It was convenient to protect him and get the most accurate information at the same time. Did you know that Jiang Huiqing was qualified for this task? Jiang Huiqing is a flexible person. When I proposed this plan, the first person I thought of was him. Xinyu didn't deny this point. When he comes back from the northern desert, he can stay in the capital. Xinyu sat on the swing while Shang Junlin pushed him from behind. In the whole world, only Xinyu could be treated like this by the emperor. When the prime minister came, he saw this scene. Eunuch Ming quickly went forward and reported, "Your Majesty, the prime minister is here. Your Majesty, please go ahead." Xinyu turned his head and said to the people behind him, "You, come with me." Shang Junlin hugged Xunyu's waist and carried him up. Xinyu had no choice but to go with Shang Junlin. The prime minister was summoned to the palace by Shang Junlin to talk about Jiang Huiqing's matter in the northern desert. Now that Jiang Huiqing had gained the trust of the third prince of the northern desert, the development of the situation was better than expected. The first step had been taken, and it was time for the second step. The prime minister entered the palace to make arrangements for the next step. Huiqing's actions are really beyond my expectations. The prime minister was used to bringing Xinyu along when Shang Junlin was discussing matters. His expression didn't change at all. If possible, he wanted Xinyu to be an official instead of just appearing occasionally. For example, this time, the plan was first proposed by Xinyu, and the candidates were also proposed by Xinyu. They could send other people, but the effect wouldn't be as good as now. The next step is to find a way to delay the internal strife in the northern desert. The third prince can't do it alone. When the third prince is powerful enough, we can send people from Subei to do it. The prime minister said, "Yes, only when the two sides are evenly matched and don't let one side become powerful can we delay as much as possible." The prime minister deliberately led the topic to Xinyu. As a last resort, Xinyu said a lot of his own ideas. "We can't let the northern desert know that we are involved in this in the short term. Otherwise, under the influence of external forces, they will twist into a rope and unite against the external forces. To do this, we must grasp the timing and scale." After talking for a while, the prime minister left with satisfaction. Xinyu leaned on the back of the chair and sighed. This matter can be solved by His Majesty and the prime minister. Why does the prime minister want me to say something? The prime minister has always been a talent. With a used talent, if he enters the imperial court, he will be valued by the Prime Minister. Shang Junlin knew what the Prime Minister was thinking. After all, the Prime Minister had praised Shan Yu's talent in front of him more than once. The Prime Minister is really unique. If it were other ministers, they would probably point at my nose and scold me. The imperial harem can't interfere in politics. Shun Yu laughed softly. I don't have such a rule. Shang Junlin stretched out his hand. You, come here. Didn't you ask the hidden dragon guards to investigate Zhu Wang? Recently, the hidden dragon guards found something. Shin Yu walked over and was pulled into the man's arms. Chapter 207. Shin Yu obediently nestled into Shang Junlin's arms and found a comfortable position for herself. What did you find? In the early years, Zhu Wang was active in the Subei region. Later, he disappeared for a period of time. The next time he appeared, he was in Yuezhou. Shang Junlin didn't beat around the bush and directly told the truth. Subei? Shin Yu suddenly thought of the young man who was sent back to the capital by official Fong. It's Subei again. You also thought of it, right? The young man who was sent to the capital by Fong Jun said that he was saved by someone who looked very similar to you in Subei. Based on the time, the two of them appeared in Subei at the same time. But at that time, my mother had already passed away. The person who appeared in Subei couldn't be my mother, but she looked very similar to me. Maybe she was related to my mother by blood. I think so too. I've already sent the hidden dragon guards to Subei to look for more clues. Maybe we'll be able to find out the truth soon. Having clues was better than having nothing. Shin Yu kissed Shang Junlin's face. Your Majesty, you've worked hard. Helping Ayu solve her problems is not a big deal. It's what I should do. The coldness in Shang Junlin's eyes dissipated and was replaced by a gentleness that he only showed in front of Shun Yu. I wanted to reward your Majesty more. Since your Majesty said it's not a big deal, then forget it. Shun Yu pretended to get up. Shun Yu's waist was grabbed. She turned around and pretended to be confused. What are you doing, your Majesty? I was wrong. Shang Junlin stared at Shun Yu. His eyes were full of emotions. After a quarter of an hour, the two of them looked at each other and didn't do anything. In the end, Shun Yu compromised and kissed the man's lips. It was a touch. The man's movement to leave was stopped. The man's voice was hoarse. Ayu's reward is only this? As he spoke, the man's hot breath could be heard. The man's eyes became even darker, as if he wanted to suck in the person who was looking at him. What do you want, your Majesty? Shin Yu didn't notice that his voice had become hoarse. Of course, I need Ayu to reward him well. Their voices disappeared as their lips touched. Shin Yu grabbed the black cloth on the man's shoulder. Her white fingers were contrasted against the black cloth. Her fingers tightened little by little, and her fingertips turned white. A small bird flew in from outside the window and chirped a few times before flapping its wings and flying away. Shin Yu was kissed enough before she was released. Her body went soft and she fell into the man's arms. She was held tightly by the man who was already prepared. If this is Ayu's reward, I don't mind giving you a bit more. Shang Junlin held Shun Yu's wrist and caressed Shun Yu's delicate skin. Shin Yu struggled. Of course, he didn't succeed. Does your Majesty only want this? He leaned in the man's arms. His breath was slightly unstable when he spoke. If I want more, will you give it to me? Shang Junlin whispered in Shun Yu's ear. The hand around her waist moved, but Shun Yu held it down. Your Majesty already said that these things are what you should do. Why did you suddenly go back on your words? Your Majesty's golden mouth and jade words don't count for anything in this matter? The two don't conflict. I'm willing, and so is Ayu. Shang Junlin simply held her hand and played with it. I've already rewarded you for today. We'll talk about the rest later. Shun Yu knocked the man's shoulder with his forehead. I'll remember this. Ayu, don't go back on your words when the time comes. I know. Shin Yu really wanted to bite the man who took advantage of the situation. The weather gradually became warmer, and the matter of the Lin family became more and more clear. The officials who were implicated in this matter were pardoned. As for those who were still alive, the imperial court sent special officials to express their condolences. Only a small number of people were still alive. Regarding this, no one felt that it was strange. The previous emperor liked to use heavy punishments. Back then, the officials involved in this case had more or less been punished. In addition to the grievances in their hearts, the long journey after being demoted and removed from office was enough to make their physical condition worse. Bai Chiwen was one of them. At the time of the incident, he was only 20 years old. He was a small official who had just entered the imperial court. His words carried little weight. Because he sided with his teacher, he was implicated and his official career was ruined. After being demoted, he wandered around for many years. Finally, he returned to the capital and opened a wonton shop on West Street. When the imperial court rehabilitated the Lin family, he had been waiting for this day. Bai Chiwen took the newspaper and went up the mountain alone. He stopped in front of a lonely grave and took out a match to light the newspaper. Decades have passed. My teacher can finally be rehabilitated and his reputation can be restored. The same thing happened everywhere. The imperial court acted quickly. After Shang Junlin gave the order, the local officials received the news and implemented the imperial court's arrangements. Some people were rehabilitated and some were investigated again. The people were most willing to see the people who made the mistake get the punishment they deserved. Bai Chiwen sat by the lonely grave for a long time. When he went back, he found that there were many customers in the shop. Many of them were familiar faces. "Mr. Bai, we are here to eat wontons today. You can't quit just because there are so many people." Bai Chiwen smiled amidst the noise. He no longer had the ambition he had when he was young. It was good to live a simple life like now. Not far away, Xinyu noticed the commotion. He pulled Shang Junlin's sleeve and whispered, "Your Majesty, should we go over there and take a look? You wants to eat wontons?" Shang Junlin looked at the hanging sign. Now that he mentioned it, Xinyu was a little hungry. The business is so good. The wontons must be delicious. Shang Junlin didn't mind. He took Xinyu and walked over there. It was Xinyu who proposed to leave the palace today. The Lin family's affairs were carried out in an orderly manner. There were no other major events in the imperial court. Xinyu thought that if they didn't leave the palace now, Shang Junlin would be busy for a long time. Therefore, he proposed to go out for a walk. The two changed into casual clothes and went to the West Street that they rarely set foot in. Most of the people living here were ordinary people. There were almost no nobles. They didn't have to worry about bumping into people they might know. When Xinyu and Shang Junlin walked into the shop, Bai Chiwen had just finished greeting a group of customers. "Guests, this way please. There is one seat left." Bai Chiwen asked them to sit down. They were surrounded by relaxed people in the crowd. They were just a member of the crowd and wouldn't be treated specially. This was a scene that Shang Junlin had never experienced before. "Guests, the wontons are ready." The steaming wontons were placed in front of them. Xinyu picked up the spoon and scooped up some. The wontons were big. The skin was thin, and there was a lot of stuffing. When he took a bite, the soup mixed with the meat stuffing rushed into his mouth. It was delicious. The wontons are better than the ones made at home. Xinyu didn't eat wontons much when he was in the palace. Every day, the kitchen would make new dishes for him. Wontons were not special. It was good enough to eat it once a month. If he likes it, you can ask him to make it for you at home. Shang Junlin said casually. "What are you talking about? If you like Boss Bai's wontons, you can come to eat it every day. Why do you want to ask him to make it for you at home? Boss Bai is an official. You can't just order him around at will." The dissatisfied voices of other guests came from the side. Xinyu held Shang Junlin's hand and whispered, "Don't be angry, Your Majesty. It's my honor to be liked by all of you." This guest just said it casually. "Don't hurt the harmony." Bai Chiwen hurriedly came over to smooth things over. The others spoke one after another. "Yes, I don't think this young master has any bad intentions. Old Zhao, it's time for you to change your bad temper." Listening to the voices coming from all around, Xinyu lowered his head and his shoulders trembled slightly. "If you want to laugh, just laugh. Do you think I'll be angry with you because of this?" Shang Junlin helped him up and said helplessly. Xinyu chuckled and said, "Who told you to talk nonsense?" After the banter, no one took this matter to heart. However, when they finished eating and paid for the meal, they were told that all the money for today had been paid. That person said that the boss of the wonton shop is an official and can't be easily touched by others. What's going on? Xinyu asked on the carriage back to the palace. It's about the Lin family. He was implicated that year and lost his official position. The imperial court sent someone to ask him if he wanted to return to the imperial court. He refused. Shang Junlin sat up straight. Xinyu leaned on his shoulder and felt comfortable. Shang Junlin casually played with the long hair on his neck and said, "Not many people know the name Bai Qiwen. However, you should have an impression of his teacher. He was one of the early court elders of the late emperor, Court Elder Xian. He was Court Elder Tsin's student." Xinyu obviously knew about Court Elder Xian. It could be said that there were not many scholars in the world who didn't know about him. Court Elder Tsin had been honest all his life. He had many students and was praised by everyone as a great scholar. During the Lin family case, Court Elder Tsin tried to protect the Lin family but offended a treacherous official who was in the limelight at that time. He was framed and lost his official position. It is said that after Court Elder Tsin left the imperial court, he completely disappeared. Some people said that he was assassinated. Others said that he lived in seclusion in the mountains. Your Majesty, do you know where he went in the end? At that time, Court Elder Tsin's influence was too great. To avoid any unexpected events, there were indeed people who wanted to make a move on him. However, no one knows whether they succeeded or not. After that, there was no news of Court Elder Tsin this time. Court Elder Tsin students should be very happy that Court Elder Tsin overturned the case for the Lin family. Xinyu was right. Court Elder Tsin students were all over the world. After Court Elder Tsin overturned the case for him, many of them held big banquets at home to celebrate this matter. Although a person's death was like a lamp being extinguished, no one wanted their teacher to be accused of something he shouldn't be. For a time, there were more and more articles praising Shang Junlin. The chefs of Yuzhong Palace suddenly received an order to prepare wontons for the noble. Since they didn't know what was going on, they could only put down the other food and began to study how to make delicious wontons. During dinner, wontons were served. The imperial chef put in a lot of effort to make wontons that had a unique taste. Xinyu ate to his heart's content and ate a bit more than usual. Xinyu, who had eaten until he was full, was led by Shang Junlin for a stroll in the small garden. Your Majesty, where is the youth that was brought back by Court Elder Fang now? He is currently working by Fang Jun's side. From the looks of it, Fang Jun seems to be planning to train him. Court Elder Fang is really dedicated to De Huan? What do you mean? Your Majesty, look, Court Elder Fang's daughter is in Subei. In the future, she will definitely work for the court. Court Elder Fang himself has always been working hard for De Huan. The child he picked up was also trained by him to work for the court. Isn't that very dedicated? One by one, they were all working for the court. Chapter 208. Yu is right. Fang Jun has always worked hard for the imperial court. I have always known that. I will make sure to keep an eye on the child he picked up. If he was not disloyal, he would give him an opportunity. If he was, he would ensure the safety of the Fang family. Under the moonlight, Xunyu hooked his finger with Shang Junlin's. He knew that Shang Junlin had sent someone to ask the boy later, but unfortunately, the information he got was limited. After Fang Jun returned, the boy was brought to his side and taught. It was as if he was a junior in his family. How Fang Jun arranged the boy was his private matter. Even the emperor could not intervene. Shang Junlin did not like to ask about the affairs of his officials. If the boy had not said that he had seen someone who looked like Xinyu, he would not have paid him any more attention. The wind at night was very cold. Xinyu and Shang Junlin walked around and returned to the palace. After bathing, Xinyu leaned on the soft couch. A palace maid took a hand warmer to dry his hair. Shang Junlin sat on the other side and read the memorials. Da Huan was flourishing, and there were many things that the emperor, Shang Junlin, had to read every day. Even with the help of the prime minister, Fang Jun, and other officials, there were still endless memorials to read every day. After his hair was almost dry, Xunyu waved the palace maid away. He got up and walked to Shang Junlin's side. Your Majesty is still busy? He lowered his head. His hair slid down his shoulders and fell on the table and the memorials. Shang Junlin stopped writing. There are still a few more. Didn't you finish reading the memorials during the day? Shun Yu ran his fingers through his hair and moved it away from the memorials. The cabinet sent them in at night. Shin Yu looked at the memorials. There was nothing important written on them. They could be handled by the cabinet ministers themselves. Shin Yu flipped open the other memorials. Without exception, they were all the same. Your Majesty can just let the Prime Minister and the others approve these memorials. There's no need to go through them personally. Shin Yu had noticed before that Shang Junlin was very meticulous with Deheng's matters. He would personally handle each and every matter. Previously, because the aristocratic families were in power, Shang Junlin did not trust them. Now that the aristocratic families had been suppressed, the people who were promoted were all his own people. He could completely hand over the unimportant matters to them. We are used to it. Shang Junlin closed the memorial. Thinking about it, it made sense. Now that the imperial court was under his control, he did not need to personally attend to everything like before. In fact, the Prime Minister and Fang Jun were fully capable of reviewing these memorials. If Your Majesty is still worried, it's fine to have them review it after they're done. There's no need to review it personally. When Shin Yu worked for the King of Yu in his previous life, the King of Yu didn't ask about many things. Shin Yu was sure that the King of Yu didn't know as much as he did about many things. A Yu's words are correct. Shang Junlin placed the brush on the brush holder and reached out to hold Shin Yu in his arms. He instructed Eunuch Ming, "Tomorrow, send these memorials back to the cabinet and let them review them before sending them to the palace. This will be the case for future memorials." Yes. Eunuch Ming brought a young eunuch forward and put away the memorials on the table. Shin Yu remembered the contents of the memorial that he had casually glanced at and asked, "The aristocratic families want to borrow the power of the imperial court to restrict the printing of movable type?" Shang Junlin, "They most likely know that we are involved in this matter. They sent the memorial to test our attitude." Shin Yu, "What does Your Majesty plan to do?" Shang Junlin, "This matter indeed requires the imperial court to step in. If the imperial court doesn't step in, how can we promote this method to every part of Dahong in the shortest time possible? It's too slow to rely on the power of the people." Shin Yu, "The aristocratic families will not be happy to see this." Shang Junlin, "We don't expect them to be happy with what we're doing." The next morning, Shang Junlin brought up this matter at the morning court. As expected, he was met with strong opposition from the aristocratic families. This step was completely out of the aristocratic family's expectations. When they saw that the new printing method was only secretly circulating among the people, they thought that Shang Junlin wouldn't want to make a big deal out of it and directly confront the aristocratic families. Thus, they sent a memorial to test Shang Junlin's attitude. Who would have thought that the other party would directly throw a ball at them? "Your Majesty, you can't." Several aristocratic ministers stepped forward and knelt in front of the emperor. "Oh?" Shang Junlin supported his chin with one hand and looked down with interest. "Why not?" "Why not?" Of course, it was because this matter was too unfavorable to the aristocratic families. But this reason couldn't be brought out in the open. The ministers looked at each other and were momentarily speechless. "Since you can't give a reason, this matter, Your Majesty, you can't." An old minister from an aristocratic family interrupted Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin looked over unhappily. "My dear minister, why don't you tell me the reason?" His tone was very calm and could even be said to be warm, but none of the ministers present were foolish enough to think that his feelings were the same as what he was showing. Being stared at by the man's emotionless gaze, the old minister's back was drenched in cold sweat. It was clearly an extremely calm gaze, but for some reason, it gave off a huge sense of oppression. This minister. The old minister steeled his heart. This minister thinks that this matter is extremely unfavorable to Da Huan. From what we see, it's not unfavorable to Da Huan, it's unfavorable to all of you. We know very well what you're thinking and what you're doing. Don't think that we're letting this matter rest just because we're not pursuing it. After he finished speaking, the court fell silent. No one dared to really anger Shang Junlin. Countless examples had shown that if they opposed Shang Junlin, they would be the unlucky ones in the end. Now, Shang Junlin had the hearts of the people, and the prestigious ministers in the court were also on his side. If the aristocratic families wanted to control him, they had to first consider themselves. His Majesty seems to be very angry today and punished several ministers. Mushi said as she tied up Shun Yu's hair. What is it for? It seems that the aristocratic families don't want His Majesty to do something, but His Majesty is determined to do it. Thinking of the conversation with Shang Junlin at night, Shin Yu roughly guessed what had happened in the court. His Majesty hasn't returned yet? Mushi shook her head. Eunuch Ming sent someone over and said that His Majesty has a meeting with the ministers and asked young master not to wait. Does young master want to serve the meal? Go ahead. The meal in the small kitchen had already been prepared. It was only waiting for the master to order it to be served. Soon after Mushi went out, she brought the meal in with the palace maids. When he was alone, Shun Yu was not very picky. Mushi had already noticed this. While serving Shun Yu, she said, when young master eats alone, he is different from when His Majesty is present. How is it different? When His Majesty is present, young master is more picky. Mushi had been by Shin Yu's side for many years, so she knew some of Shin Yu's habits very well. When he was in Count North's residence, he was treated poorly. Although Shin Yu was picky about what he ate, he was not as picky as he was now. After entering the palace, under His Majesty's intentional indulgence, he was even more picky than before. He was not willing to let himself suffer at all. If Mushi didn't mention it, Shun Yu wouldn't have noticed it. After it was mentioned, he thought about it carefully. It seemed that it was true. When he was with Shang Junlin, he would always unconsciously indulge himself more. When he first entered the palace, he was not like this. At that time, all he knew about Shang Junlin was from others. He was afraid of the man who was called a tyrant in his previous life. He didn't know when the fear in his heart disappeared. Now, when he thought of Shang Junlin, he only felt full of trust. It turned out that unconsciously, the defense line in his heart had been broken. He couldn't resist this feeling. He originally thought that his feelings for Prince Yu in his previous life were love. Now that he thought about it, if it was really love, then this love was mixed with too many things. Instead of saying it was love, it was better to say that it was a shackle in the name of love that was imposed on his heart. This so-called love drove him to do things for Prince Yu unconditionally without asking for anything in return. Why was he so sure in his previous life that he liked Prince Yu? Shin Yu carefully thought about the events of his previous life, but he couldn't find any trace of it at all. It was as if he had naturally fallen into the huge net woven by Prince Yu's love. He lost all his judgment and was driven by him. Shun Yu's head ached faintly. He closed his eyes and stopped thinking about the events of his previous life. Now, he could basically confirm that there were many suspicious points in his previous life that he didn't discover. After the morning court, Shang Junlin asked the Prime Minister, Fang Jun, and several ministers to discuss matters in the imperial study. Regarding the movable type printing technology, the Minister of Revenue was the first to know about it, followed by the Minister of Works. Now, the Ministry of Works had mastered this new printing technology and put it into use. The results were good. I want to establish an imperial college. Shang Junlin went straight to the point and said his thoughts. Like the imperial college? It's similar, but different. I want to establish an imperial college that includes basic education. To establish an imperial college, many things were involved. Whether the commoners were willing to send their children to the imperial college, where the imperial college would be located, what kind of students would be recruited, there were countless problems that had to be solved. First, we will conduct a trial in the capital. The candidates for the teachers are usually county scholars. They don't need to have top-notch knowledge. The students just need to be literate and know some basic knowledge. Hearing this, the ministers heaved a sigh of relief. If it was just basic education, it would be much simpler. You all can discuss this matter among yourselves. Within half a month, I want you all to come up with a basic plan. Yes, Your Majesty. There were also aristocratic ministers present, such as Minister Duan. He knew what kind of impact this decision would have on the aristocratic families, but he couldn't raise any objections. His Majesty the Emperor was no longer someone they could control. After leaving the palace, the aristocratic ministers who had received the news came to find him. Lord, are we just going to let His Majesty do as he pleases? What else can we do? His Majesty just warned the aristocratic families today. If we jump out to object before the concrete plan is out, what would His Majesty think? If it's just basic education, the problem isn't that serious. I'm just afraid that this is just the beginning. It seems like His Majesty is determined to weaken the power of the aristocratic families. Are we just going to accept it? Minister Duan's eyes flashed. He thought of something and fell silent. Did the aristocratic families object to His Majesty's proposal? Xinyu was curious about the aristocratic family's reaction after hearing about this from Shang Junlin. Even though it was just basic education, it might not be the case in the future. The aristocratic families shouldn't have no reaction at all. They naturally want to object, but I haven't touched their interests yet. They will just wait and see for now. When it's officially implemented, there will definitely be trouble. Xinyu stood up and sat beside Shang Junlin. Since His Majesty has proposed it, he must have a solution. I won't worry about His Majesty. His Majesty, Imperial Physician Gu wishes to see you. He said that he has found the results of the experiment that His Majesty and Your Majesty asked him to do previously. Eunuch Meng walked in and reported. Xun Yu's heart skipped a beat. Imperial Physician Gu was mainly responsible for two things. One was his illness, and the other was Fei Ming. The latter was something that he and Shang Junlin had instructed together. Chapter 209. Imperial Physician Gu was invited in. After paying his respects, he said, "Based on the ideas you provided, I tried them one by one and found out the effects of the medicine you mentioned. Regarding the matter of Crimson Dream, Xinyu had used the opportunity when Imperial Physician Gu was taking his pulse to speak to him in private. Especially the symptoms that appeared after contracting it, it was a disaster that would cause a large number of deaths in the future. Since Xinyu had been reborn, he naturally had to stop it if he could. Crimson Dream is colorless and odorless, so it won't cause too much harm to the human body. However, if mixed with other medicines, it will have different effects. This subject has been trying to find another medicine that can produce the effects Your Highness mentioned. Later on, this subject discovered that this subject was wrong from the very beginning. To achieve such an effect, it isn't something that can be achieved simply by mixing. The effects that Imperial Physician Gu mentioned were mentioned by Xinyu before. After the disease broke out, it was no different from an epidemic. There would be high fever, coughing, and the body would become weaker and weaker. If the specific cause of the disease could not be found, the only path left was death. Imperial Physician Gu took out a sealed letter from his sleeve. I have written the prescription on this letter. Your Majesty and Your Highness, please take a look. Eunuch Ming took the prescription from Imperial Physician Gu and handed it to Shang Junlin. Has Imperial Physician Gu found a solution? Xinyu was most concerned about this problem. If the epidemic could not be stopped, it would be best if there was a solution. The proportion of the medicine is different, so the solution is different. However, as long as I know how to make the medicine, I can develop a solution. Imperial Physician Gu said. I have troubled Imperial Physician Gu with this matter. However, I hope that Imperial Physician Gu will not spread this matter out for the time being. I understand. Imperial Physician Gu cupped his hands. I have one more thing. Shang Junlin put the letter aside. Just say it. I have not tested it on a person yet. If you want a specific cure, you need someone to test the medicine. The palace fell into a short silence. Imperial Physician Gu added, I can guarantee the safety of the person testing the medicine. Your Majesty and Your Highness, please rest assured. This medicine is quite infectious. I need an absolutely safe place. Mengchong, point a few people to Imperial Physician Gu. As for the location, choose a secluded place and set up protective measures. As for the specific arrangements, listen to Imperial Physician Gu. Xinyu heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that there was progress in the treatment of Fei Ming. As long as Imperial Physician Gu could find a cure, they wouldn't be in a completely passive state if something really happened in the future. Calculating the time, the calamity caused by Crimson Dream would probably happen in the next 2 years. In this life, Crimson Dream had long been banned within the Great Huan region. In order to avoid attracting unnecessary attention, Crimson Dream was banned along with other medicines. Other than that, some of the banned drugs were addictive, Some of them could gradually corrode a person's body, and some of them were strong drugs. Crimson Dream didn't stand out among them, as if it was just a side effect. There were also a few other drugs that were in the same situation as Crimson Dream. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Shang Junlin held Xinyu in his arms and patted his back to comfort him. I know. Your Majesty will definitely be able to handle everything. After handing over some unimportant matters to the cabinet, Shang Junlin had a lot more free time. Are you bored staying in the palace all day long? Do you want to go horseback riding with us? Shang Junlin walked in wearing a black robe. Why do you suddenly want to go horseback riding? Shun Yu was in the middle of painting. When he heard this, he put down his brush. What are you painting? Shang Junlin walked over. When he lowered his head, he saw a painting of a man wearing battle armor, standing upright with a sword in his hand. You likes to paint us wearing battle armor so much? This wasn't the first time Shin Yu had painted such a picture. Out of 10 times, at least 5 of them were of him on the battlefield. These paintings were all put away by Shang Junlin and placed in a separate place. If Shun Yu went to take a look, he would discover that there were many of his things placed there, including the piece of paper filled with Shang Junlin's name. Shin Yu originally wanted to throw it away, but it was forcefully taken away by Shang Junlin. Shin Yu didn't know why he wanted to paint Shang Junlin wearing battle armor. Every time he sat down and wanted to paint something, he would discover that he was painting a battlefield with all kinds of Shang Junlin wearing battle armor. Shin Yu just wanted to paint something casually, anything was fine. Since he subconsciously wanted to paint Shang Junlin on the battlefield, then he painted it. Before he finished painting, Shun Yu's train of thought was interrupted. He simply stood up and said, "Maybe it's because I heard too much about your Majesty going to the battlefield to kill enemies. So I wanted to paint the scenes that I didn't see with my own eyes. I said I wanted to wear it for you to see, but you didn't want to." Shang Junlin pinched the young man's cheek. It was strange. Shun Yu had painted Shang Junlin on the battlefield so many times, but when it came to seeing it with his own eyes, he faintly felt reluctant. Shin Yu and Shang Junlin came to the racecourse together. After the last time, this was the second time Shin Yu came to the racecourse. When the white horse saw him, it came over and rubbed against him intimately. Shin Yu touched the horse's head and took a piece of candy to feed it. He turned over and mounted the horse in one smooth motion. "Your Majesty, let's race." Shang Junlin mounted the horse and rode it to Shun Yu's side. "Your legs won't be able to stand it if you run too fast." Shin Yu didn't ride many horses. Every time he rode a horse, the skin on his legs would be abraded. Not only would it affect his normal walking, but it was also a kind of torture to apply medicine. That's true. Thinking of the consequences, Shin Yu gave up his initial plan. Shin Yu held the reins and let the horse walk slowly on the grass. Shang Junlin rode beside him and listened to his irrelevant words. After walking for a while, Shin Yu felt that it wasn't enough. He squeezed the horse's belly and urged it to speed up. "If my skin is abraded, then so be it. Let's have fun first." Shin Yu urged the horse to run for a while, and then turned back to look at Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin was stunned by his sudden movement. After he reacted, he caught up with him. Blue sky and white clouds, green grass and green land. Under the clear sky, the horse galloped. The wind blew in their faces, making them feel carefree. Shin Yu rode to his heart's content. After he got off the horse, his legs went soft and he almost fell to the ground. Shang Junlin quickly supported him. "Is it very painful?" Shin Yu wrapped his arms around Shang Junlin's neck and was carried back by the man. He didn't feel it when he was riding a horse. After a while, the pain became more and more obvious. It was burning hot, and he couldn't even move slightly. Shang Junlin carried him into the house and ordered eunuch Meng to bring the medicine. Shin Yu looked at the familiar medicine bottle and tilted his head to the side. "Why does your Majesty carry this medicine everywhere you go?" Shang Junlin applied the ointment with his finger and applied it to the wound. "Yu is so delicate. If he doesn't carry medicine with him, what will happen if he bumps into something?" The ointment was cool. When it touched the wound, Shun Yu gasped. He withdrew his leg. "It hurts." "Be gentle." Shang Junlin's movements were already very gentle, but Shun Yu still felt pain. The main reason was that the wound was too special. The skin there was delicate. Xinyu wasn't used to riding a horse. This time, he rode for a few hours in a row. The area of the wound was very large. After the ointment was applied, Xunyu's forehead was covered with a layer of sweat. The hair on his temples was also wet. With the help of Shang Junlin, he sat up and leaned on the bed. "Your Majesty is right. I should have gotten off the horse earlier." Halfway through, Shang Junlin asked Xinyu to stop. Xinyu didn't listen. He liked the feeling of being free on the horse's back, so he indulged himself a little. The result was tragic. This time, he didn't know how many days it would take for him to fully recover. After a while, the Prime Minister came to find him. Xinyu knew that Shang Junlin came to the stud farm today with several important ministers. Xinyu lay on the bed with a tired expression. "Your Majesty, go ahead. I'll rest for a while." Shang Junlin got up and left, leaving the palace servants to serve him. Xinyu lay on the bed for a while. He was exhausted and fell asleep not long after. In his half-awake state, he felt that someone was touching his face. "Is it your Majesty?" He heard a chuckle. That person seemed to say something, but he couldn't hear clearly because of the thick fog. "Who is it?" Xinyu became more sleepy. His tightly knitted brows slowly relaxed, and his consciousness slipped into a deeper abyss. When he woke up, the sky was filled with the sunset. Xinyu looked at the window, blinked his eyes, and slowly sat up. "Young master, you're awake?" Mushi came in with hot water. "Did anyone come while I was asleep?" Xinyu had a headache. He pressed his fingers on his head. "I've been here all this time. I didn't see anyone come. Why do you ask? Was it a dream?" Xinyu wasn't sure. "Nothing. Where's Her Majesty?" "Her Majesty is still talking to several officials." "When did the Prime Minister and the others come?" "About the same time as us. Maybe a little later. I just finished tidying up here, and they arrived." "Then they must have waited for a long time." Xinyu couldn't help but hold his forehead. Shang Junlin didn't tell him. If he knew that there were officials here, he definitely wouldn't have let them wait for so long. Xinyu washed his hands and face. Imperial Physician Gu's medicine was very effective. After sleeping for a while, he didn't feel much pain. He tentatively moved his leg, but his movement was slightly stiff because it affected his injury. Mushi saw this scene and thought of something. Her face turned red. "Young master, you'd better rest in bed. If there's anything you need, just let me do it." Xinyu could tell at a glance that Mushi had misunderstood. His lips moved. He wanted to explain, but he didn't know where to start. The people who served him were all familiar with his condition. Every time Shang Junlin sated, Xinyu would lie down for a day or two. At first, Mushi was very worried. Later, she secretly asked Imperial Physician Gu. After confirming that Xinyu didn't have any abnormalities after he recovered, she was completely relieved. She was already used to this kind of situation. Her Majesty is too much. She obviously has to discuss business with the officials, but she still dragged young master along for so long. Mushi only dared to complain when Shang Junlin wasn't here. Although she knew that this kind of thing was normal, Mushi was still dissatisfied when she saw Xinyu's uncomfortable appearance. How can you blame Her Majesty? Shouldn't you blame your young master for pestering Her Majesty? Xinyu raised his eyebrows. If she had to say something, it was indeed him who pestered Her Majesty this time. Of course, the reason was different from what Mushi thought. Young master is not such a person. Every time, "It's Her Majesty." Mushi's voice became smaller and smaller. The last few words were almost inaudible. "Every time. It's me what?" Shang Junlin's voice came from outside. Xinyu didn't even think and said, "It's Her Majesty who pesters me." The door was pushed open. Xinyu saw Shang Junlin standing outside, followed by the Prime Minister, Fang Jun, and several other officials behind Shang Junlin. The officials' expressions changed. They must have either just arrived or heard a lot. Shang Junlin said leisurely, "I wanted you to pester me, but..." Xinyu suddenly coughed, and the corners of his eyes turned red. Why? Why did he have to face such a scene? Chapter 210. Mushi didn't have time to think. She hurriedly stepped forward to pat Xinyu's back. Shang Junlin strode in and took Xinyu into his arms. "What's wrong?" Xinyu coughed a few times. Mushi brought some water over. Shang Junlin took it and fed it to Xinyu. Drink some water? Xinyu lowered his head and drank the water in Shang Junlin's hand. How long has His Majesty been here? Not long. Is you feeling better? Xinyu nodded. He was choked by himself. Now that he had calmed down, he was naturally fine. Several ministers consciously lowered their heads and stood outside. They didn't dare to look inside. Seeing Xian Yu's uneasiness, Shang Junlin waved his hand to dismiss the ministers. Eunuch Ming hurriedly asked the ministers to go elsewhere. These ministers were all promoted by Shang Junlin. Today, they came to discuss some matters about starting a primary school. They had heard about Shang Junlin and Xun Yu's relationship. They had also seen with their own eyes how the two interacted at the banquet. However, those were different from what they saw today, especially the words that the maid had said today. It turned out that His Majesty had always been sticking to His Majesty. The ministers had different emotions in their hearts. Why didn't His Majesty announce his arrival? Xun Yu twisted his body and sat down. I originally just wanted to see if you were awake. I didn't expect to hear the conversation between you and your servant girl. You is telling the truth. Why are you blushing? Shang Junlin bent his finger and rubbed Xun Yu's cheek. Because of what happened just now, Xun Yu's face was still red. Xin Yu thought, is my face red because of what I said? It's obviously because these words were heard by those ministers. Xin Yu didn't feel anything when he said these words in front of Shang Junlin, but when he thought that the ministers brought by Shang Junlin would also hear these words, he just wanted to bury himself. Does your leg still hurt? Shang Junlin moved his palm down, wanting to touch it. Xin Yu hurriedly reached out to stop her. I'm much better, thanks to the ointment your Majesty brought. Are you hungry? Why don't you ask them to serve us food? Shang Junlin was not annoyed when his hand was stopped. He held Xun Yu's hand in his palm. Have you finished your discussion with His Majesty? Are we just going to leave them like this? Xin Yu was already delayed for so long because of him. If he ignored the other ministers because of him, he would feel bad. We've finished our discussion. You don't have to worry. After dinner, they will go out to ride horses. Shang Junlin brought them here with the intention of letting them relax. With the natural horse farm obtained from the northern desert people, Shang Junlin wanted these ministers to be familiar with the operation of the horse farm. Although the area of the pasture was not big, the operation inside was very mature. There were many things worth learning. The ministers also knew the other reason why Shang Junlin brought them here. After dinner, they learned about the operation of the horse farm under the guidance of the servants. Xin Yu and Shang Junlin finished their dinner together and lay back on the bed. In fact, he really wanted to go out for a walk, but the position of his wound was too awkward. The friction of the cloth when he walked would rub the ointment away and worsen the injury. He could only walk less for the time being. Xin Yu and Shang Junlin stayed outside for 2 days. Except for the first day when Shang Junlin was not around, he vaguely felt that someone had appeared in the room. After that, he did not have this feeling again. He asked the guards around, but no one noticed a stranger coming in. Xin Yu could not find any clues. He wondered if he had taken his dream as real when he was in a daze. He did not tell Shang Junlin about this matter. After returning to the palace, nothing similar happened again. Xin Yu slowly put this matter to the back of his mind. The imperial court acted quickly. Shang Junlin gave the order. Before the deadline of half a month was up, they had already come up with a general plan. Shang Junlin mentioned this matter in the morning court. The specific implementation needed to be discussed in the imperial court before a detailed plan could be made. The weather gradually became hot. Xin Yu took off his clothes again and again. He leaned against the bridge and casually threw the bait in his hand into the pond. There were many ornamental fish of different colors in the pond. They followed the smell of food and swam over. The sun was dazzling, and the water was sparkling. The fish leisurely swayed their tails and jumped out of the water from time to time, waiting to be fed. Xin Yu threw another handful of bait. This was Xun Yu's new pleasure. When he had nothing to do, he would come over to feed the fish. Gongzi has been here a few times. These fish seem to recognize you. Mushi looked at the fish swimming in the water and sighed. They are getting bigger and bigger. They don't recognize me. They recognize the food in my hand. If he did not have food to feed them, no fish would swim out of the pond even if he stood there for a long time. Xinyu had seen enough. He handed the bowl of fish food to the palace servant behind him. Okay, let's go back. The place where Xinyu came to feed the fish was located between Yuzhong Palace and the Imperial Garden. When he first entered the palace, Xinyu almost never left Yuzhong Palace. After a long time, he took the palace servants to walk around. With Gongzi's feeding, these fish have grown especially fast this year. The palace servant holding the fish food said flatteringly. Xinyu smiled and did not speak. There were people in charge of every place in the palace. Even if he did not come, the palace servants would feed the fish. It was just that the master did not care and did not feed the fish so diligently. The wind in the palace changed quickly. Seeing that Xinyu cared about the ornamental fish, the palace servants in charge of feeding them would also be more attentive. Shang Junlin did not care about these things at all. He did not ask about it. In the long run, the palace servants were happy to be idle. Why does you like to feed the fish recently? When Shang Junlin returned to the Jade Gate Palace, Xinyu was not there. After asking the people of the Jade Gate Palace, he found out that he had gone to feed the fish. Just as he was about to look for him, he bumped into Xinyu and his group. Xinyu waved his hand and motioned for the palace servants to leave. If I didn't go to feed them, I wouldn't have known that there were so many beautiful fish in the palace. Xinyu was right. The ornamental fish that could be raised in the palace were carefully selected by the imperial household. The ordinary ones would not be sent to the palace at all. If you likes them, let them send some to Yuzhong Palace. Your Majesty always indulges me like this. Didn't Imperial Physician Gu say that if there is a chance, let me walk outside more often? This trip can be considered as training. No matter what, Yu is right. The court has discussed the basic regulations of the elementary school. Does you want to come with me to see it? Although it was a question, Shang Junlin did not give Xinyu any other choice other than to agree. He took him to the inner room and took out the booklet that the Prime Minister had sorted out and presented. Although the aristocratic families were dissatisfied with Shang Junlin's proposal of the elementary school, they could not say anything. They had planned to wait for the specific method to be released and then find fault with it to prevent it from developing further. They did not expect that this method, which had been discussed by the court officials, did not give them any leeway to find fault. Every possible outcome was prepared with a countermeasure. Even if they raised doubts, it would be quickly resolved. In the end, it didn't seem like they were looking for trouble. Instead, it seemed like they were working hard to perfect the specific method of doing elementary school. When Xinyu heard Shang Junlin talk about what had happened to the aristocratic families, he laughed out loud. They probably did not expect that in the end, the result would be like this. Xinyu could imagine the expressions on the aristocratic families' faces when they realized that something was wrong. After the news of the imperial court's plan of elementary school was revealed, it caused a heated discussion among the people in the capital. Elementary school? Are they going to teach children how to read? Not only that, as long as they want to learn, they can learn. I am quite tempted. Is it expensive? If it is too expensive, it will be difficult to afford. It is not clear for the time being. Let's wait for further news from the imperial court. It is said that it is to let people who want to learn how to read, so it should not be too expensive. It is hard to say. Look at the money spent on books, ink, paper, and inkstone. None of it is cheap. There were people who were optimistic about what the imperial court was going to do, and there were also people who were not optimistic about it. On the contrary, some merchants seemed to smell a business opportunity from this. Therefore, the Ministry of Revenue received many letters from big merchants saying that they were willing to help. Since the implementation of the new commercial law, these merchants have become more active than before. Shang Junlin looked at the booklet presented by the Ministry of Revenue and said. Xinyu stretched his head. What are they thinking about? They said that they are willing to contribute money and effort to the new school. If they are willing, it is not impossible. However, they cannot be allowed to interfere too much. The main authority must be in the hands of the imperial court. The Minister of Revenue wrote a memorial because of this concern. If the people who contributed money and effort were all merchants, there would be a lot of hidden dangers. Xinyu pointed at the memorial with his fingertips. Some of the unimportant things can be distributed, but the important things still have to be done by the imperial court. Because it was just an elementary school, there were not many classes, and there was not much time for classes every day. The existence of this school was purely to let the people learn how to read. If they wanted to learn more, it would still be the same as before. This matter was not something that could be done in 1 or 2 days. Seeing that there were not many places that could threaten them, the attention of the aristocratic families was slowly diverted. Compared to the affairs of the people, they were obviously more concerned about what happened in the imperial court. With the arrival of summer, the weather gradually became warmer. After washing up, Shenyu walked to the desk in light pajamas. Shang Junlin lowered his head, his brows furrowed tightly. "What is it, Your Majesty?" Shenyu stretched out his hand and wanted to smooth the man's frown. "It's raining heavily in Lin County. I'm afraid there will be a flood." What was spread out beside Shang Junlin's hand was the report from Lin County. Ever since the establishment of the Great Huan Dynasty, there had been countless floods in Lin County. Just after Shang Junlin ascended the throne, there had been no less than 5 floods. "Your Majesty, don't worry. Nothing will happen." Shenyu walked to Shang Junlin's side and sat down, rubbing his forehead. "I hope so." However, things did not develop as they had hoped. For the next few days, the news from Lin County was not good. In just a few days, the water level of the river near Lin County had risen a lot. The atmosphere in the imperial court was getting colder and colder. Lin County was very far from the capital, so it took a lot of time for the news to arrive. No one knew what the situation was in Lin County now. Shang Junlin had already issued the order to migrate. In the face of a natural disaster, they had to save as many people as possible. Shenyu lived deep in the imperial harem, so he could feel that the atmosphere was not right recently. For a few days, there was no news from Lin County. About 5 days later, the latest news finally came. There was a flood in Lin County. Fortunately, the response was timely and the damage was minimized. The ministers in the imperial court heaved a sigh of relief. However, Shenyu did not let down his guard so quickly. He remembered that the fierce epidemic in his previous life happened after the flood. He was not sure if it was this time. Chapter 211. What is it you worried about? Shang Junlin walked in from outside. Eunuch Ming closed the umbrella and stood aside. He took a clean handkerchief from the palace servant and handed it to Shang Junlin. It was raining heavily outside. Even with an umbrella, raindrops still fell on the man's body. Shang Junlin picked up the handkerchief and casually wiped himself before walking towards Shenyu. Seeing Shang Junlin, Shenyu's brows relaxed and he greeted him. "I'm thinking about how long this rain will last." It had started raining in the capital for the past 2 days. The pitter-patter had not stopped. Shenyu was not only referring to the rain in the capital, but also the rain in Lin County. It had been raining in Lin County for half a month, and there was no sign of the rain stopping. The people in Lin County had been moved to a safe place, but their belongings were still there. It was impossible to leave them alone. Thanks to a use flood control method, although the rain is heavy this time, it did not cause much damage. The dam is stable, and there is not much danger for the time being. Shang Junlin did not expect that Shenyu would be so worried about this matter that he could not even sleep well at night. In fact, compared to the previous few times, the situation in Lin County was the least serious this time. "Your Majesty, you must pay attention to the epidemic." "I know. The imperial court has already sent imperial physicians over." With Imperial Physician Wu as the leading physician, almost all the imperial physicians in the imperial hospital who have made contributions in this area have gone. Shang Junlin touched the corner of Shun Yu's eyes. "Yu is so worried. Is it because of the dream you had?" "What dream?" Thinking of the excuse that he had found for himself before, Shun Yu suddenly fell silent. "Yu, don't worry. No matter what you dreamed of, I will not let it happen. No matter how terrible it is only a dream." "Your Majesty is right. I was possessed. No matter what, it was something that happened in his previous life." He did not need to be so nervous because of what happened in his previous life. So what if it really happened? This time, they had already taken precautions. They would not be as helpless as they were in his previous life. Seeing that Shun Yu had recovered, Shang Junlin took his hand and led him to the soft couch to sit down. Didn't you say that the kitchen made new snacks a few days ago? I want to try it. Mu Shi, go to the kitchen, Shun Yu said. Yes, young master. It took a lot of effort to make this new snack. While waiting, Shang Junlin ordered Eunuch Ming to bring the chess pieces over. It's been a long time since I've played chess. Let's play a game. Shun Yu had no objections. This time, Shin Yu played a black stone. On the chessboard, the black pieces surrounded the white pieces layer by layer. Every time a piece was placed, the white pieces became weaker. Your Majesty, you don't have to go easy on me. Shin Yu held a black stone and said helplessly. When he first placed the stone, he made a few wrong moves. He should have lost, but Shang Junlin deliberately went easy on him and turned the situation around. You can't think of anything else when you're playing chess with me. The white chess piece was placed, and the situation that was supposed to be a sure loss changed. On the chessboard, the white and black pieces were evenly matched. Outside the chessboard, Shin Yu had no time to care about anything else. Until Mu Shi came in with the snacks, there was still no winner between the two of them. Smelling the fragrance, Shin Yu came back to his senses from the game. Placed on the jade plate were snacks in the shape of small animals. They were white and chubby and looked very cute. Different shapes had different tastes. Shin Yu preferred sweet snacks. He usually ate light-colored snacks. Some of them were soft, and some were hard. Shin Yu liked all of them. Putting down the chess piece, Shin Yu said, I don't know when the winner will be decided. Your Majesty, why don't you try the snacks first? Sure. Shang Junlin put away the chess piece. Shin Yu sat opposite Shang Junlin and introduced the flavors of the snacks to him. Rabbit-shaped ones are sweet, butterfly-shaped ones are sour, and black wolf-shaped ones are salty. Shang Junlin looked at the snacks on the jade plate. Each one was round. Even the black wolf that Shin Yu mentioned didn't look majestic at all. Which one does you like best? Rabbit, Shin Yu answered without thinking. Shang Junlin wasn't surprised by this answer. After eating the snacks, the rain outside became lighter. Shin Yu walked to the window and looked outside. What are you looking at? Shang Junlin walked over and stood behind Shin Yu. Enveloped by the man's scent, Shin Yu's unclear emotions gradually disappeared. He leaned back and leaned on Shang Junlin's shoulder. Shin Yu suddenly felt a little strange. During this time, he had been anxious about Lin County. However, it shouldn't be like this. Lin County's situation wasn't as serious as it was in his previous life. Even if he was worried, it shouldn't be like this. He had experienced so many things. Even if it was a matter of life and death, he had never been like this. This was very abnormal. Your Majesty, do you feel that something is wrong with me recently? Shang Junlin was stunned by his question. Is it because of Lin County's situation? Shin Yu raised his hand and covered his heart. I thought so before. Shang Junlin frowned. I asked Imperial Physician Gu to enter the palace. Your Majesty, have you forgotten that Imperial Physician Gu is studying Fei Meng? Because of this matter, Imperial Physician Gu hadn't entered the palace for a while. I sent someone to ask about the progress. If Shang Junlin was determined to do something, Shin Yu couldn't dissuade him and could only let him do as he wished. When the little eunuch who was sent to the palace came back, he brought Imperial Physician Gu. Has Imperial Physician Gu found anything? Shin Yu didn't expect that Shang Junlin's people would directly bring Imperial Physician Gu into the palace. I have found a way to deal with it. Imperial Physician Gu had dark circles under his eyes due to lack of sleep, but he was in good spirits. Shang Junlin stopped Imperial Physician Gu from speaking and said, Let's take a look at Guejuan's body first. Imperial Physician Gu stepped forward and took Shan Yu's pulse. Has Guejun been overly worried recently? Has your sleep been affected? Yes, Shin Yu nodded. It's easy for me to dream recently. The dream was grotesque and variegated. Every day, there were different fragments. Shin Yu tried to piece them together, but found that these fragments didn't have any order and were only fragmented content. I have prescribed a prescription to calm your nerves. You can take it first. If it doesn't work, I will think of other ways. Imperial Physician Gu's prescription was divided into two types: oral medicine and medicinal bath. At night, Xinyu soaked in hot water with medicinal herbs. Her mind gradually relaxed. After the bath, Shang Junlin carried her out. Xinyu nestled in his arms. The lingering smell of medicinal herbs still lingered at the tip of her nose. "Your Majesty, have I become the smell of medicinal herbs?" Xinyu raised her hand and sniffed it. "Does it smell bad?" "What nonsense are you talking about?" Shang Junlin put her on the bed and leaned on her. "It smells good." There was a faint medicinal smell on the young man's body. It didn't make people feel bitter because it was a medicine to calm the nerves. Smelling it could make people feel relaxed. That night, Xinyu slept very well. She quietly nestled in the man's arms and slept until dawn. When she woke up the next day, all kinds of emotions in her heart faded away, leaving only peace. The rain stopped. The palace servants opened the windows and the sunlight shone in, as if taking away all the obscure emotions. Xinyu stretched her arms and got out of bed. "Gongzi." Mushi came over and tied up Xinyu's hair. After tidying up, Xinyu stood up. "I'm going out for a walk." The imperial court didn't hide the incident in Lin County. The people learned about it from the people's newspaper. Lin County? I remember that this place has always been prone to floods. Yes, about 4 or 5 years ago, it rained heavily for more than a month. The river broke the dam and many people died. The situation this year seems to be fine, because the officials in Lin County don't dare to leave the people alone. They immediately took measures to deal with it. Have you forgotten what happened 4 or 5 years ago? At that time, all the officials in Lin County were killed by 1,000 cuts. How could we forget? It was also raining that day. The ground of the execution ground was dyed red. Yes, Her Majesty was very angry at that time. Many officials in the capital were also killed. Later, the officials sent to Lin County didn't dare to ignore this incident. After all, if they didn't handle it well, they would lose their heads. Her Majesty also sent officials who are good at water conservancy. They seem to have been repairing it since 2 years ago. This time, the damage caused was small because the water conservancy was repaired. Her Majesty has foresight. Otherwise, I don't know how much damage we would have suffered this time. I heard that the rain this year wasn't lighter than the previous one. Lin County, which was being talked about by the people, welcomed a sunny day. The people huddled together looked up at the sky and felt the warmth of the sunlight shining on their bodies. Gradually, their faces revealed joyful expressions. "It's sunny. The sun is out. Her Majesty didn't lie to us." The battered and exhausted people instantly hugged each other. They had waited in fear for so long, and finally, a sunny day came. A man in an official's robe came out after hearing the commotion and raised his hand to block the sunlight. The sky was finally sunny. Joy spread among the crowd. Suddenly, a person collapsed without warning and screamed. The man in the official's robe touched his forehead. "I'll go and take a look." "Okay, be careful." After a while, the subordinate came back with a heavy expression. "It's a fever." The man in the official's robe's heart sank. Separate the crowd and call a doctor. The scene they didn't want to see the most might happen. The joy brought by the sunny day was covered with a layer of gloominess. Sir, the imperial physician sent by the imperial court has arrived. Quickly invite him in." Imperial physician Wu took the lead and went to the patient's place. Several officials followed him. One of them said, "As soon as we found something wrong, we separated the people. We'll have to trouble the imperial physician to take a look." Imperial physician Wu felt the pulse one by one. His heart sank slightly. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly remembered what Guijun said after he was summoned to the palace before he went to Subei. The situation of these people was very similar to what Guijun said. "Young master, I found this." In Yuzhong Palace, Mu Shi handed a small ball of paper to Shunyu. "Where did it come from?" "When I went out today, I was bumped by a little palace maid. When I came back, I found this on my body." Mu Shi didn't know what was written on it and didn't open it without permission. "Open it and take a look." Mu Shi leaned to the side and opened the paper. There's only one address written on it. "Oh." Mushi looked at it several times, but there was only one address in the middle. She hesitated and said, "How should we deal with this?" Shinyu supported his chin with one hand and said casually, "Throw it away. It's not worth caring about things of unknown origin." Yes, Mushi had always followed Shunyu's words. When she worked with Shunyu, she knew best that she shouldn't ask questions that she shouldn't ask. She shouldn't be too curious, because curiosity was the most likely thing to ruin things. Although this paper ball was given to her, she didn't have anything on her at all. Then the other party's target was obviously Shunyu. Mushi would never allow the young master to be hurt because of her. "Young master, should we investigate that palace maid? If you go to look for her now, you probably won't find her." Shunyu chuckled. The fact was just as Shunyu said. When Mushi went to look for her that day, she didn't find the palace maid at all. It was as if she had evaporated into thin air. Outside the palace, in the sky room of the Enrich Tower, a tall young man stood by the window. He was dressed in white and had a cold temperament, but his eyes were covered with a layer of white cloth. "You're just a child. Why don't you have any curiosity?" The man in white spoke. His tone seemed to be very distressed. "Scholar, do you need me to bring the person here?" If no one spoke, almost no one would notice that there was another person in the room besides the man in white. It was a man wrapped in a pitch-black robe. His voice was slightly hoarse. He half knelt on the ground, and his attitude was very respectful. "The Emperor of the Great Huan Kingdom protects people like protecting his eyes. How can you bring the person here? Last time, I finally met him. Unfortunately, time was limited and I couldn't talk to him." The man in white was used to his subordinate's silence and said to himself, "It's the first time we meet. I should prepare well." Chapter 212. After that day, there were no more abnormalities in the palace. Shinyu thought about it and told Shang Junlin about it. The location on the note was outside the palace. It was not a secret place. Shinyu and Shang Junlin had even been to this place before. It was unknown whether the person on the other side was conceited or well prepared to meet here. "Where's the note?" Shang Junlin frowned slightly after hearing it. "I asked someone to throw it away. That person's purpose was unclear. He only gave a location. Who knows what he wanted to do? I simply pretended that I didn't see it. It was just a note without any beginning or end. Shinyu would be stupid if he really want to meet someone because of this. You is really..." Shang Junlin stroked Shen Yu's cheek. "Just throw it away. It's not a big deal. What does that palace maid look like? I'll ask someone to check it out." Shen Yu called Mushi. According to Mushi's description, Eunuch Ming led people to search the entire palace and found a match. "Your Majesty, Your Highness, I found someone, but, according to that person, she has never seen Mushi. When Mushi went to meet her in person, she acted as if she didn't know her at all." Eunuch Ming reported the results of his investigation. "Why didn't Mushi find her when she went to look for her that day?" Shunyu asked. "Because that palace maid was in a coma for the whole day. She only woke up on the third day. The other palace maids with her also said that they didn't see her that day." Eunuch Ming's investigation was very detailed. He found out a lot of things that Mushi didn't find out. So, either this palace maid is lying, or this matter really has nothing to do with her. Someone took her identity and sent the note to Mushi. Shunyu pondered. The palace was heavily guarded. How did that person pass through the layers of guards? Was it someone who was already in the palace, or was it someone from outside? Shinyu suddenly remembered the person who suddenly appeared in his room at the horse farm that day. If this person really existed and was not someone he dreamed of, was there any connection between this and what happened in the palace this time? After Eunuch Ming finished his report and left, Shanyu was still thinking about this matter. "Why don't we send someone to that place to take a look?" Shang Junlin sat beside Shenyu and pulled her into his embrace. "The location on the note is Enrich Tower. It's too high profile. I don't know what he wants to do." Shunyu half closed his eyes, various thoughts flashing through his mind. "No matter what they want to do, we will not let anyone have the chance to hurt you." Shang Junlin ordered the hidden dragon guards to secretly investigate the guests who appeared in Enrich Tower and submit a list of suspicious people. At the same time, the security in the palace was tightened, especially in Yuzhong Palace. Those with unknown identities and insignificant people were not allowed to enter. The hidden dragon guards submitted the list of people who came to the capital and stayed in Yingxing Tower. Shang Junlin opened the list and let Shan Yu take a look. The list listed everyone's background. To the hidden dragon guards, these things were not difficult to investigate. However, they could not determine who was suspicious just by looking at the list. How's the situation at Yingxing Tower? It's the same as usual. Nothing unusual. If the person on the other side really wants to see me, he will find a chance to see me. Under the candlelight, Xin Yu's eyes were cold. We shouldn't be the ones who should be anxious. That's right. Shang Junlin put his hand on Shan Yu's hand. The young man's body temperature had always been low. It was as if he needed to be held in someone's arms to warm up. Xin Yu leaned on the man lazily. There is one thing that I didn't tell your majesty. I thought that I mistook the dream as reality. However, after Mu Shi suddenly received a note from an unknown source, I thought about it carefully. It shouldn't be my imagination. What is it? Shang Junlin stopped stroking the back of Shan Yu's hand. That day, after I went to the horse farm, I fell asleep in the evening. I felt that someone appeared in the house. I thought it was your majesty. After I asked Mu Shi, I found out that no one came in at that time. This was one of the reasons why Xin Yu mistook the dream as reality. At that time, he was sleeping in the inner room. Mu Shi was guarding the outer room. There were also guards outside. It was impossible for anyone to sneak in quietly. Why didn't you tell me at that time? The hand that was originally loosely covering the back of Shan Yu's hand suddenly clenched. Shang Junlin felt a lingering fear. If that person wanted to harm you, wouldn't he not know the reason when it happened? No matter what happens in the future, you have to tell me, okay? The man's tone was low. Xin Yu could feel the nervousness in Shang Junlin's heart under his seemingly calm tone. He rubbed the man's shoulder. I didn't feel any malice from that person. After I woke up, I didn't feel any discomfort in my body. Otherwise, I would definitely tell your majesty. Your majesty, don't worry. Didn't Imperial Physician Gu check my pulse later? I'm really fine. I'm still worried. Let Imperial Physician Gu take a closer look. It's already so late. Don't bother Imperial Physician Gu. The distance from the outside of the palace to Yuzhong Palace was not short. I'll send someone to pick him up, Meng Chong. Eunuch Meng pushed the door open and walked in. Your Majesty, what are your orders? Arrange for a few people to bring Imperial Physician Gu to the palace. If it was something else, Xin Yu would persuade Shang Junlin and he would most likely listen. However, when it came to Shan Yu's health, Shang Junlin was very insistent. Eunuch Meng still had to go to Shang Junlin's side to serve him, so he did not stay for long. After he left, Shen Yu lost interest in writing. Lin County. Imperial Physician Wu led the other imperial physicians and local doctors from the capital to treat the local people. The officials of Lin County were very cooperative. The sick people were separated, and the healthy people lived in another place. Although the epidemic came unexpectedly, there was no big trouble under the arrangement of Imperial Physician Wu and the others. Imperial Physician Wu personally saw many patients and wrote down the symptoms of these people. The more he observed, the more frightened he became. The situation that did not happen in Subei happened in Lin County. Imperial Physician Wu did not dare to delay and hurriedly wrote down his findings in a memorial. He found a time when there was no one and came to Lin County's government office. Imperial Physician Wu, you have worked hard during this time. It's not hard. This is what I should do. I came here today because I have something important to ask Darren. Imperial Physician Wu, please speak. About this epidemic, I made a record. I hope Darren can help to send it to the capital. Imperial Physician Wu did not write anything that should not be written. He remembered what Xin Yu had told him. The contents of the memorial would be confusing to people who did not know the inside story. Imperial Physician Wu's memorial was mixed in with the other memorials in Lin County and sent to the capital. This memorial was written about the specific behavior of the patients after they were infected with the epidemic. After the cabinet dealt with it, it was sent to the palace together. During this time, the imperial court was busy with the matters in Lin County. Xin Yu sat next to Shang Junlin and occasionally read a few memorials. Imperial Physician Wu's memorial was mixed in with the other memorials and was not eye-catching. After Shang Junlin picked up the memorial, Imperial Physician Wu's memorial was exposed. Xinyu took out the memorial and opened it. The contents of the memorial immediately attracted Shun Yu's attention. After reading it, Shun Yu felt that the dust had settled. The man-made natural disaster in his previous life happened again in this life. The matter of Fei Ming had not been solved yet, but these people had delivered themselves to his door. Shun Yu's hand that was placed on the memorial gradually clenched. Because he was using too much strength, his knuckles turned white. When he closed his eyes, the image of the people lying on the ground in pain after the epidemic appeared in his mind. No one treated them. As long as they got close, they would be infected. The hope in his eyes was extinguished little by little, and in the end, only numbness was left. All of this was caused by the ambition of some people. His fingers were forcibly pried open, and the memorial in his hand was taken away. What are you thinking about? Why are you so lost in thought? According to Imperial Physician Wu's memorial, the epidemic in Lin County this time may not be a natural disaster, but a man-made one. Shen Yu held Shang Junlin's hand tightly, as if he was holding onto the only duckweed. Shang Junlin finished reading the memorial quickly. The aura on his body became more and more piercingly cold. This matter, Zhen will investigate to the end. The people who did this probably did not expect that we would be prepared. No matter what kind of fruit they wanted to pluck, they could only watch helplessly as they failed step by step. Chapter 213. The symptoms on Imperial Physician Wu's booklet almost overlapped with what Xinyu knew in his previous life, but whether it was the same as in his previous life still needed to be verified. Imperial Physician Gu was once again called into the palace. Xinyu handed Imperial Physician Wu's booklet to him. Imperial Physician Gu, take a look. Isn't the effect of the medicine produced by Fei Ming very similar? The more Imperial Physician Gu read, the more astonished he felt. He had spent too much time studying Fei Ming, so he naturally knew better than anyone what the symptoms would be after being infected with it. This subject is willing to go to Lin County and solve the problem there. At this moment, Imperial Physician Gu finally understood why the emperor and the nobles wanted him to study such a thing. It was because only by making preparations in advance would they not be caught off guard after the incident happened. Imperial Physician Gu traveled in a light carriage to Lin County. If someone really did make a move in Lin County, Your Majesty should send people to pay attention to suspicious people around Lin County. Xinyu always felt that the person who did this might not have left Lin County. Generally, people who did this kind of thing like to see the results of their own creation with their own eyes. Xinyu's guess was right. The person was still in a small county near Lin County. At the end, the matter has been settled. It's time to go back. A man in a gray robe said. Wait a little longer. A man with a goatee sitting opposite him said. The man in the gray robe said anxiously, if we wait any longer, what if it arouses suspicion? We are legitimate merchants passing by. We are going to Lin County to purchase goods and sell them to other places. Even if it's a search, we have the necessary permits. What are you afraid of? The man with the goatee was dissatisfied. I feel a little uneasy. You should change your courage. You are always worried about everything. If you were really afraid, you wouldn't have come with me in the first place. The man with the goatee sneered. He didn't want to come with this person in the first place. He was always timid and overcautious. It would only bring him trouble. If this person didn't say that he wanted to pursue stability, he would have made a move on the first day he came. Why would he wait until now? People came and went outside the inn in a hurry. Everyone had a dignified expression. He knew why. It was because Lin County, which was not far away, was suffering from the epidemic. The two places were too close, and they were worried that the epidemic in Lin County would spread here. What do you think if I turn this place into a living hell? Don't do too much. If they find out, the punishment is small, but if you ruin the plan, I don't want to be implicated by you and lose my life for nothing. The gray-robed man's tone was threatening. Got it. Let's go and take a look at the situation in Lin County. What can Lin County do? If we want to do something, we should do it bigger. The situation in Lincian was effectively suppressed. It was indeed very serious because people kept getting sick. However, it was not that serious. Although there were many people who got sick, with the efforts of Imperial Dr. Wu and the others, although these people could not recover, they would not be in any danger in a short time. Unlike the painful and oppressive atmosphere that outsiders had imagined, everyone in Lin County was in good spirits. Lin County had been sealed off. People outside could not enter, and people inside could not come out. If the gray-robed man and the man with the goatee wanted to get news of Lin County, they could only go through the mouths of others. The people outside did not know the truth. They spread the word as horrible as possible. Everyone said so, so the two of them did not doubt the authenticity of the news. Paper could not wrap fire. Things that were not mentioned in the civilian newspaper still spread to the capital through word of mouth. Is the epidemic in Lin County true or false? It's fake. It's not even mentioned in the civilian newspaper. It's not fake. The epidemic really happened in Lin County. Now, Lin County is not allowed to enter or leave. Where did you hear the news? Why haven't I heard about it? I heard it from my relatives and traveling merchants. They travel extensively and are much more well-informed than us. If it's true, why is there nothing in the civilian newspaper? It can't be that the imperial court has not heard the news that we all heard, right? Is the situation this time the same as last year's in Subei? It can't be. After last year's incident, no one would dare to commit crimes again, right? For a moment, the discussion about this matter surpassed any other matter. The imperial court still did not give a clear answer. Mu Shi reported this matter to Shunyu. Now, Ing Hua had spread a layer of information network in Dahuan. News from all over the country could be passed to Xin Yu's ears through this network. Why don't you tell the people about this? Mu Shi was puzzled. Xin Yu did not answer. Instead, he said, habit is a terrible thing. In the past, when there were no civilian newspapers, the people received news from all over the country. After there were civilian newspapers, they became the people's source of news about all kinds of things in Dahuan. Now, as long as there is no news from the civilian newspaper, the people will be skeptical about the incident in Lin County. Mu Shi thought about it and found that it was true. His Majesty naturally has his reasons for not doing it. If the person behind the scenes knew the truth, how could this play continue? The news about Lin County became more and more intense. Seeing that the imperial court did not explain, the rumors became more and more outrageous. Xin Yu could get new developments from all over the country through Ing Hua every day. It had to be said that the person who chose to start with Lin County made a very good move. Lin County was far away from the capital. It took a lot of time to send news back and forth. During this time, it was very easy to do something. Brother is going to Lin County? Imperial physician Gu was packing his luggage when Gu Huai, who had just returned home from court, walked in. Xiao Huai, where did you hear this news? Imperial physician Gu turned around. No one knew that he was going to Lin County except for the two people in the palace. Logically speaking, Gu Huai should not have known. If I didn't ask, would I not know where you went after you left? Gu Huai's eyelashes drooped. There was an indescribable feeling in his voice. He knew that Imperial Physician Gu had been studying Fei Ming. He had guessed this matter. He had been investigating Fei Me and had some understanding of the situation in Lin County. How could it be? Imperial Physician Gu put down what he was doing and walked towards Gu Huai. Even if you didn't ask, I would tell you. You are my younger brother. I will not hide it from anyone but you. Brother, can you not go? It is very dangerous there. Gu Huai lowered his voice. He suddenly felt like a young boy who was acting spoiled to him. Did His Majesty ask brother to go? I can go to the palace to find His Majesty and ask His Majesty to change someone else. There are so many imperial physicians in the imperial hospital. Why must brother go? Xiao Huai. Imperial physician Gu grabbed Gu Huai's arm. It was not His Majesty. Brother wanted to go himself. His Majesty did not agree at first. Imperial physician Gu pulled Gu Huai to sit down and explained in a gentle voice. In the beginning, Shang Junlin did not agree with Imperial physician Gu going to Lin County. The reason was simple. He needed to stay behind to look after Guajuan's health. It was Imperial physician Gu who fought for this opportunity. He had studied Fei Ming for so long. In terms of understanding, no one in the Imperial hospital could surpass him. If he went himself, he would have a better chance. He also knew that Gu Huai did not allow him to go because he was worried about him. He raised a hand to pat the head of the youth who was already taller than him and comforted him. Brother will be fine. I want to go with brother. Gu Huai suddenly spoke. No. Imperial physician Gu refused without thinking. The situation in Lin County is strange. I will ask His Majesty for permission to investigate. I will not interfere with brother's decision. Brother, don't stop me. Okay? Gu Huai was a man of his words. When he went to court the next day, he took the initiative to volunteer. Shang Junlin was already considering suitable candidates. Gu Huai was the one he was most satisfied with. However, since Imperial physician Gu wanted to go, he did not want to put the two brothers in danger. Therefore, he did not say anything. Have you thought it through? Shang Junlin gave him a chance to change his mind. Yes. This subject is willing to work for De Huan and help His Majesty. Gu Huai's attitude was firm. Since you have such a heart, I will fulfill your wish. Thank you, Your Majesty. After court, Shang Junlin returned to Yuzhong Palace and told Xinyu about what happened in court. It's just right. If Gu Huai goes, Imperial physician Gu can go with his people. He cares so much about this brother that he did not hesitate to go with him. He should be able to protect him. Did Imperial physician Gu tell General Gu about this? Xinyu went around to Shang Junlin's side and sat down. Gu Huai should have guessed it himself. He was originally investigating Fei Ming, so it's normal for him to have some understanding of the situation in Lin County. Gu Huai's people and Shang Junlin's hidden dragon guards were both investigating Fei Ming. Both sides would occasionally cross paths. Shang Junlin sent the hidden dragon guards to investigate Fei Ming to Lin County. Gu Huai made the conclusion based on this. General Gu is also fine. He is the most suitable candidate. Maybe he can find some useful clues during this trip to Lin County. As the two of them were talking, Mu Shi suddenly came in with something in her hands. Young master, this servant found this. What is it? Xinyu did not take it. Instead, he looked at the thing in Mu Shi's hands. It was a piece of jade. It was not big, only about half the length of a finger. It was completely white. There seems to be words on it. Xinyu said. Yes, the content is the same as the note from last time. Where did this thing come from? Shang Junlin asked. Replying to Your Majesty, this servant found it when I was tidying up young master's clothes today. Clothes? Which one? The one that young master wore outside the palace. The clothes Xinyu wore in the palace and outside the palace were different. If he did not leave the palace, the latter would not be useful. Investigate. Shang Junlin's voice was cold. During this period of time, if there was a chance to get close to Guajuan's clothes, investigate it thoroughly. Xinyu did not think that this jade was put there by the palace people. Maybe it was left outside the palace that day. He just did not know why it was only discovered today. After he told Shang Junlin his guess, the man's face became colder. After knowing that Xinyu's room might have been entered, he sent people to investigate inside and out. However, they did not find any clues. Now, they found something left by that person in Xinyu's clothes. Shang Junlin's displeasure rose to the extreme. Yingxing Tower. I also gave him the jade. I was worried that he did not see it, so I asked someone to pass him a note. It was written with the characters Da Huan. It has been so many days. Why hasn't he come to see me? How about I go to the palace to see him in person? Forget it. It is so difficult to enter the palace. It is better to think of a way to get him out. Let's go to Count North's residence. As his brother, I came from afar. I should see his family. Count North's residence welcomed an uninvited guest. Looking at the man in white who only showed the lower half of his face, Count North seemed to see something terrible. He opened his eyes wide and was almost speechless. Who are you? Chapter 2:14. Sir Jinbei did not expect to see a stranger as soon as he arrived at the study. The man stood in front of the desk with his back to him and seemed to be looking at something on it. Hearing the footsteps, the man turned back. For a moment, Sir Jinbei's mind went blank. The memory hidden in the depths of his heart was evoked. Suddenly, he seemed to see the woman standing under the peach tree and smiling at him again. The man was obviously a man, but his face was too similar to the one in his memory. Even the curve of his lips was exactly the same. He blurted out, "Who are you? How did you get in?" Sir Jinbei barely suppressed all kinds of emotions in his heart and asked. The study was an important place and was more strictly guarded than other places. The man's face was covered with white silk, but he could walk freely in the mansion without being discovered by anyone. It was enough to show that he was powerful, and Sir Jinbei would not take him lightly. "Of course I walked in." The man in white chuckled. "Who are you?" Sir Jinbei frowned and asked. "Seeing my face, you can still ask this question. I think you don't have any feelings for your wife who died young." "Don't slander me," Sir Jinbei said fiercely. The man in white put away the smile on his face and said coldly, "If you have feelings for her, why did you let her child enter the harem?" Sir Jinbei stammered and could not speak. No matter how he found excuses for himself afterwards, it was true that he sent his son into the harem with his own hands. Isn't he living a good life now? Who in the world can treat him like his majesty? Count North Marquis told himself for the umpteenth time that he had facilitated this matter, which was beneficial to Shan Yu. No matter how he's doing now, you can't deny your selfishness in doing those things. Seeing that he's doing well now, I won't fuss over this matter with you. Why don't we talk about everything that happened to him before he entered the palace in Count North's residence? Are you here to fight for justice for him? Where were you in the early years? Where were you when he was chased when he was young? Don't you think it's too late to talk about this now? Why don't you ask him if he owes you a favor? This is between me and him. You don't have to worry about it. Since I'm here now, I won't let anyone have the chance to hurt him again. As for those who hurt him before, I'll remember it. Wait. Slow. Forget it. Why did they only come now? Because that person had hidden him well. He only found out about his whereabouts a few days ago. After he found out, he immediately dealt with the matters of the clan and rushed here. The man in white left as quietly as he came. Duke Jinbei sat on the chair, his whole body weak. He never knew that there was such a terrible person behind Shan Yu's mother. Just by simply standing in front of him, he gave off an extremely oppressive feeling, making people unable to raise any thoughts of resistance. Does Shan Yu know about this person's arrival? Moreover, the words he said made the residents of Northern Marquis on the verge of collapse. If the other party really wanted to do something, they would definitely not be able to resist. Cold sweat slid down from his forehead. Duke Jinbei had all kinds of thoughts in his mind. He couldn't let everything in the residence of Northern Marquis be destroyed in his own hands. The only way now was to find Shan Yu and strike first. No matter whether that person stood on Shan Yu's side or on his opposite side, he couldn't let the two people easily unite. Otherwise, everything he had would be finished. Why did the scholar come here specially to scare Duke Jinbei? The man in black, who had always been silent, suddenly spoke. He originally thought that the scholar would do something to them when he went to the residence of Northern Marquis, but he just said a few words. His scholar was never a kind person. If he was, he would have been swallowed by that place and not even his bones would be left. But the scholar didn't uphold the style of the residents of Northern Marquis, who had abused Shan Yu before. He didn't make people beg for death. If I don't scare him, how can he tell my brother about me with exaggerated details? He refused to come out of the palace to see me, so I had to think of other ways. The man in white said in a careless tone, "Aren't you worried that Duke Jinbei will deliberately distort the facts? My brother can't be so stupid to believe what others say. If Shan Yu was really stupid, why did he have to go through so much trouble? He would have already fished him out of the palace. As for the chase that Duke Jinbei said, I don't know. They still dared to do such a thing. It seems that my warning was too light." After saying this, the white-clothed man fell silent. The black-clothed man silently stood behind him, like a shadow that would never leave. After the man in white left, Duke Shinbei tossed and turned. He felt that he shouldn't just wait for death. If he hadn't been punished, he could have handed in a memorial and entered the palace. Now the emperor said that he didn't want him to enter the palace and make the nobles unhappy, so he took away his right to enter the palace. Duke Shinbei didn't expect that one day it would be so difficult to see his own son. He wrote a memorial and asked a familiar official to find a way to send it to the emperor. Because the memorial was about the nobles, the cabinet ministers didn't dare to act rashly and sent it to the palace. After Shang Junlin saw it, he told Xinyu. Duke Shinbei said that he has something to tell you about your mother. Does you want to see him? Xinyu thought about it. Since he was punished last time, Duke Shinbei hadn't bothered him for a long time. Since he said that he wanted to talk to him about his mother in the memorial, he should more or less tell him a little. I'll see him. Xinyu didn't care about the real purpose of Duke Shinbei. As long as he could get some information about his mother from Duke Shinbei, this meeting was not a loss. I'll go with you. If he wasn't there, who knew what Duke Shinbei would say to Xinyu? If he was there, at least Duke Shinbei would think about what to say and what not to say when he said something that would make Xinyu unhappy. Your Majesty, are you worried about me? I'm worried that Duke Shinbei will make you unhappy. Xinyu didn't refuse. He wanted to see Duke Shinbei to know more about his mother, not to listen to Duke Shinbei's nonsense. After the memorial was handed in, Duke Shinbei was very nervous. Finally, on the third day, the official he asked brought him good news. His Majesty said that Marquis should come to the palace tomorrow afternoon. He also said that Marquis wanted to see him for something. When the time comes, you can just talk about this one thing. Don't waste His Majesty's time with other unimportant things. After hearing this, Duke Shinbei felt bitter in his heart. The emperor was warning him not to make the nobles unhappy. When did he have to worry about this and that when talking to his own son? I understand. Shun Yu's people paid attention to every move of Duke Shinbei's mansion. Naturally, they also saw this scene. After the news was sent to Yuzhong Palace, Shun Yu's expression was cold. Is there anything unusual in Duke Shinbei's mansion these days? In the past, Shun Yu went to Duke Shinbei's mansion to ask about something that Duke Shinbei refused to say. Why did he suddenly want to say it this time? No matter how he looked at it, this matter was not normal. We didn't find anything unusual. If you want to say, before handing in the memorial, Duke Shinbei locked himself in the study for the whole afternoon. When he came out, he looked very bad. Mu Shi recalled the news that was handed in. Was there anyone else in the study at that time except him? No, our people didn't see anyone go in. It's strange that after that day, Duke Shinbei didn't go to the study for several days. In the blink of an eye, it was the day for Duke Shinbei to enter the palace. When Duke Shinbei came to Yuzhong Palace, the first thing he saw was the two people sitting side by side intimately. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Duke Shinbei bowed respectfully. After getting permission, he stood up. When he saw Xinyu again, his mood was very complicated. This son of his had not been paid attention to since childhood and had quietly grown up in a place that he could not see. When he realized the mistakes he had made over the years and wanted to make up for them, he found that everything was too late. Duke Shinbei, you can just tell me about my mother. Xinyu looked at Duke Shinbei and said lightly. Duke Shinbei came for this matter. He immediately said, when your mother insisted on marrying me, she told me that her family didn't agree with this marriage. I haven't seen her family until we got married. What is the origin of my mother? I don't know. She didn't tell me. She only said that she was in a deadlock with her family. If her whereabouts were discovered, she might be taken back. She was very reluctant to talk about her family, so I didn't want to force her. Before she died, she asked me to hide you well and not let her family find you. Otherwise, you might lose your life. Xin Yu and Shang Junlin looked at each other. They both thought of the assassination that year. Until now, they still hadn't found out who did it. Could it be related to the family that Duke Shinbei mentioned? Why didn't you say these words at that time? Xin Yu asked about what happened when he went to Duke Shinbei's mansion. For so many years, it has been safe and sound. I thought these things had passed, and the people over there would not do it again. But I didn't expect that a person who claimed to be Brother Guejun appeared in the capital. He came to me and said that he wanted to take you back to the family. With the foreshadowing, when he heard this, he would most likely think that this brother who suddenly appeared had bad intentions. Why would he take him back? To kill him? Until Duke Xinbei left, Shang Junlin's aura was very low. He held Xunyu in his arms and said in a low voice, "I won't let anyone take you away, and I will never allow anyone to hurt you, even if that person is your blood-related relative." We can't believe all of Duke Xinbei's words. Xunyu patted Shang Junlin's back to comfort him. What he said must be beneficial to him. No matter what, we have to find him first. After we find him, we will naturally know what his purpose is. Shang Junlin held the young man in his arms tightly and calmed down the rolling, killing intent in his heart. Since this person appeared in the capital, we will find him. Even if we have to dig 3 feet under the ground, we will find him. Perhaps we don't need to find him. He has already appeared by himself. Xinyu thought of you who inexplicably appeared in his clothes and the note that Mushi received. He may be in Yingxing Tower. This time, even if Xunyu didn't want to, he had to go to Yingxing Tower. Your Majesty. As if he knew what Xinyu was thinking, Shang Junlin interrupted him. If Yu wants to see him, he can only see him at the place we choose. I will listen to your Majesty's arrangement. Now that there was someone he cared about, Xinyu didn't want to be in danger because of him and the person he cared about. Chapter 215. I will arrange everything. If he really wants to find you, he will come looking for you as long as he has the chance. Shang Junlin stroked Shun Yu's hair on his forehead. If he really is the person who gave me the jade pendant, I don't think he has any bad intentions. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left me a jade pendant, Xinyu said in a low voice. After the jade pendant was found, Shang Junlin thoroughly investigated Yuzhong Palace. In the end, he found that the jade pendant was mixed in with clothes and was brought in from outside the palace. I know, but it's never wrong to be careful. Xinyu nodded. This matter was handed over to Shang Junlin to handle. Xinyu only needed to wait for the results. During this time, he didn't idle around. He asked the people of Yinghua to investigate the guests of Yingxing Tower. Young master, this is what we found during this period of time. Mushi presented a booklet. Xinyu took it, but didn't open it immediately. Instead, he said, Mushi, do you think the person who appeared this time is beneficial to me or harmful to me? This servant is not sure. But based on this person's behavior, it doesn't seem like he will harm young master. Xinyu also felt the same. But he also knew that some things couldn't be concluded too early. Yu is still thinking about this matter? Shang Junlin asked when he came back from the morning court and saw Xinyu sitting on the swing with a thoughtful expression. Shang Junlin ordered people to build this swing. Later, it became Shan Yu's favorite place to stay. Xinyu liked to stay here, so Shang Junlin would definitely accompany him. Over time, Shang Junlin set up a place next to the swing to make it convenient for Shang Junlin to review memorials. When the government affairs were busy, Xinyu would sit on the swing and read a novel. Occasionally, he would look at the memorials. Shang Junlin would sit beside him and read the memorials that were presented to him. After delegating some matters to the cabinet, the number of memorials that needed to be personally reviewed by Shang Junlin had greatly decreased. At this time, Shang Junlin and Shun Yu would sit together on the swing. One of them would read memorials while the other would read novels. They did not interfere with each other and got along harmoniously. Shang Junlin walked over and sat beside Xinyu. He reached out and scooped the young man into his arms. Is there any progress with His Majesty? I have already released the news that I will bring you back to the residence of Jinbei in 2 days. At that time, my people will surround the residence of Jinbei. If he really wants to see you and has no bad intentions towards you, he will definitely find a way to come to the residence of Jinbei. This is his only chance. If they wanted to harm Shunyu, they would have to think it through before making a move under the encirclement of so many soldiers. Why did His Majesty choose the residence of Jinbei? Xinyu leaned on the man's shoulder and slightly tilted her head. Her soft hair rubbed against the man's face, which was a little itchy. The news was sent by Jinbei Ho. It's just right to choose the residence of Zhenbei. Shang Junlin raised his hand and brushed away a strand of hair beside Shan Yu's face. I don't know how Zhenbei Ho feels now. Zhenbei Ho's mood was very complicated. Shen Yu had been in the palace for more than a year. Although she had returned to the residence of Zhenbei several times, those times were different from this time. This time, the emperor announced it personally. On the one hand, it showed that he valued Shen Yu. On the other hand, it gave people a faint feeling that Zhenbei Ho was going to rise again. After the ministers heard the news, their mood was also very complicated. At that time, when Zhenbei Ho lost power, I said that this was only temporary. No matter what, he is your father. His Majesty loves the house and its crow. He will not be ruthless to the residents of Zhenbei Ho. Who would have thought that after so many days of indifference to Zhenbei Ho, His Majesty suddenly said that he would take your father back to visit his relatives. Those who haven't fallen out with Duke Zhenbei are probably secretly happy. His Majesty really wants to put Zhenbei Ho in an important position this time? For a time, the residents of Zhenbei Ho, which no one cared about before, welcomed all kinds of guests. After sending away another group of guests, Zhenbei Ho rubbed his eyebrows tiredly. Isn't this a good sign? Why are you still frowning? His confidant came out from the inner room and was puzzled when he saw Zhenbei Ho's appearance. Zhenbei Ho couldn't tell. He just felt that things would not be as optimistic as they appeared on the surface. You don't have to think too much. As long as His Majesty favors your father, the residents of Zhenbei Ho can enjoy a day of glory. His Majesty can't spoil your father while attacking the residents of Zhenbei Ho. What you said is reasonable. Since His Majesty wants to accompany your father back, the residents of Zhenbei Ho should prepare well. There can't be any impoliteness. Because of the visit, everyone in the residence of Zhenbei Ho was busy. Such a big movement couldn't be hidden. What's more, Zhenbei Ho didn't intend to hide it. Xin Qingran got the news from the servants of the residence of Zhenbei Ho. Since Shan Yu entered the palace, his treatment in the residence of Zhenbei Ho was getting worse day by day. Now it was even to the point where no one cared about him. He couldn't compare to the treatment of the young master of Zhenbei Ho's family. His utility was reduced, and the place where he lived was far worse than before. Xin Qingran sat under the eaves, and his heart was at a loss. When he tried every means to send Shen Yu into the palace, he didn't expect that the final result would be like this. The maids and manservants chattered about Shan Yu's return to the residence of Zhenbei Ho to visit the residence of Zhenbei Ho. Their faces were full of yearning, and they completely forgot that when Shan Yu was in the residence of Zhenbei Ho, they didn't even bother to look at him because he wasn't liked by the residents of Zhenbei Ho. In the middle of the night, Xin Qingran was awakened by a cold wind. He opened his eyes and found that the window was opened by someone. He didn't know where the servants were hiding, so he could only get up and close the window himself. Just as he was about to close the window, he saw a small paper bag left by someone by the window. He paused his action. He reached out and picked up the paper bag. He found a line of words under the paper bag. When he saw the content clearly, Shan Qingran's pupil shrank. He didn't know how long he stayed by the window. When he looked up again, he saw a person standing outside the window. He couldn't see the person's face clearly. He heard the person outside the window say, "Do you want to destroy Shen Yu? As long as you take the things inside with you and get close to Shen Yu, you can achieve your goal. This is your only chance. You have to think clearly." "Who are you?" No one answered him. The wind at night was very cold. Xin Qingran looked down at the paper bag in his hand. The light in his eyes was flickering. Did he want to destroy Shen Yu? He thought about it all the time, especially when the servant girls enviously talked about Shan Yu's treatment in the palace. He couldn't wait for that person to disappear forever. The hand holding the small paper bag kept clenching, and an idea gradually became clear in his mind. Everything that happened in the Count of Zhenbei's residence didn't affect Shen Yu. He leaned on the soft couch, supported his head with one hand, and said helplessly, "Just find a few sets of clothes." Mushi tidied up the clothes and said, "Gongzi, this time when you go to the Count of Zhenbei's residence, you must be glamorous. Let those people see that Gongzi is living a good life now." Since she knew that Shen Yu was going to visit his parents, Mushi had been busy preparing clothes, accessories, all kinds of things. She swore that after Shunyu went to the Count of Zhenbei's residence, she would become the object of everyone's envy. Xinyu didn't want to disturb her mood and put his attention back to the book in his hand. He found this book in the library pavilion. It recorded what happened during the reign of the late emperor. He thought that his mother was active in the capital during this period. Maybe he could find some useful information from the book. Unfortunately, he didn't find any useful clues after reading it several times. However, he saw some things about the late emperor and the late empress. When the late emperor had just ascended the throne, there was a period of time when he and the late empress were very loving. The two of them would go to watch polo games together. Later, something happened and the late empress suddenly fell out of favor. As a result, Shang Junlin's status also plummeted. The news that His Majesty personally accompanied His Highness to visit his parents flew everywhere as if it had grown wings. People everywhere in the capital talked about it. The man in white was in the Yingxing Tower, so he naturally received the news. His Majesty really treats His Highness well. This time, he actually personally accompanied His Highness to visit his parents. Even if it's an ordinary family, being accompanied by their husband to visit their parents shows that they are valued by their husband and his family. His Majesty is the Son of Heaven, but he is willing to do such a thing. It's really enviable. Recently, my wife and daughter always like to talk about this matter. When they talk about it, their tone is full of envy. I have already promised to accompany my wife to visit her parents' home. It turns out that I'm not the only one. I also agreed. The man in white sat by the window and silently listened to the discussion below. In these 2 days, what he heard the most was that His Majesty was going to accompany His Highness to visit his parents' home. It seems that if we want to see His Highness, we have to go to the residence of Count North. The man in white whispered. This morning, the residence of Count North was very busy. Count North personally waited at the door with people, waiting for the arrival of Xinyu and Shang Junlin. The sun gradually rose. The housekeeper wiped the sweat on his forehead and didn't dare to move his eyes away from the outside for a moment. They're coming, quickly. Xinyu and Shang Junlin were respectfully welcomed into the residence. When walking through the corridor, Xunyu's footsteps paused. Shang Junlin held his hand and felt his strangeness. He asked, "What's wrong?" "I think I saw my younger brother." Although it was just a glance, Xunyu could feel the other party's jealous gaze on him. Their voices were not loud. Count North was behind them, so he could faintly hear a little. Xinyu and Shang Junlin were welcomed into the main hall. At this time, the male host of the residence should be the one to entertain the guests of his husband's family. The female host should go to the backyard with the other female members of the family. However, Xunyu was also a man. There was no female host in the residence of Count North who was qualified to entertain him. Therefore, he stayed in the main hall. Count North also knew that Shang Junlin came because of Xunyu. When Shang Junlin spoke, he would deliberately talk about Xunyu. Xunyu was not interested in staying and playing the role of a filial son with Count North. He said, "Your Majesty, I'll go out for a walk." "Go ahead. Take a few more people with you." Xunyu came out with a group of palace servants and walked around aimlessly. "Aren't you tired after following me for so long?" Xunyu walked to the lotus pond. He stopped and looked somewhere. Not long after, Shun Qingran came out from behind the tree. "How did you find out? It's hard to ignore your eyes. Why are you following me?" It was the same indifferent and superior look. Shun Qingran clenched his hands in his sleeves. Looking at Xunyu, who was surrounded by so many people, he almost couldn't control his emotions. 1 step, 2 steps. The distance between the two was getting closer. Xunyu frowned and faintly smelled a fragrance. Bang! Before Shun Qingran could get closer, a white figure suddenly appeared in front of Xunyu and kicked Shun Qingran, who was unprepared, into the pond. "Don't let him get close. The things he carries will hurt you." A cold voice came. Xunyu looked at the man in white in front of him and then looked at Shun Qingran, who fell into the lotus pond. Before he could speak, he heard Shang Junlin's voice. "What happened?" Chapter 216. Jin Bei-ho followed behind Shang Junlin. When he saw this scene, his heart turned cold. He knew that Shin Yu and Shun Xingran were not on good terms. Today, he specially ordered Shun Xingran not to come out if there was nothing important. Shin Xingran agreed verbally. In addition, during this period of time, Shin Xingran changed his style and did not make much trouble in the residence. Therefore, he relaxed his vigilance. He never expected that such a scene would be waiting for him. Unfilial son, what did you do? Shang Junlin did not care about what the people behind him thought. He went straight to Shin Yu and asked softly, "Are you okay?" Shin Yu shook his head. He was kicked down before he could do anything. Shang Junlin then diverted some of his attention to the man in white who was protecting Shin Yu. The man was dressed in white. He was tall and had a half-finger-wide white cloth covering his eyes. The lower half of his face was exposed and was very similar to Shen Yu's. "It's you." Before Shang Junlin could speak, Jin Bei-ho's shocked voice came. "Oh, Jin Bei-ho knows him?" Jin Bei-ho was at a loss. What should he say? If he told the truth, wouldn't it mean that he had lied in front of the emperor? But if he did not tell the truth, this man would definitely not let him go since he had already appeared here. Why did Jin Bei-ho stop talking? The man in white asked. His voice was like ice, cold and with a trace of coldness. Shun Xingran was still soaking in the water. He knew that his plan would not succeed. It was so close. It was all because of this man who suddenly appeared. Who was he? The water was not cold after being exposed to the sun for a long time. However, he was not good at swimming and would still feel very uncomfortable after staying in the water for a long time. Why was Shin Yu so lucky? He could succeed in everything he did. Everyone was protecting him. Even this young man in white who suddenly appeared stood on his side without saying anything. How could he not be better than Shin Yu? Shun Xingran was not reconciled. The jealousy in his heart was like wild grass, spreading layer by layer. He didn't even notice how he was looking at Shin Yu. Sensing his gaze, Shin Yu looked back. "Your Majesty, let's deal with Shun Xingran first," Shin Yu said, breaking the silent deadlock. The bodyguards received the order and dragged Shun Xingran out of the water. Shin Xingran could not resist at all. He was forced to kneel on the ground. "Shin Xingran, what do you want to do to me?" Shin Yu looked down at the person kneeling on the ground. Shin Xingran gritted his teeth and looked back. He was in such a sorry state. Shin Yu was dressed luxuriously and was well protected in the middle of the crowd. As for him, his clothes were soaked and his wet hair was stuck together. He was in an indescribable sorry state. "I just want to talk to brother." Shin Xingran looked down, looking a little pitiful. "If you just want to talk to me, you don't have to bring anything that can harm me." Shin Yu's voice was cold. "Brother, why do you believe the words of an unknown person? I don't have anything on me. If you don't believe me, you can search me yourself. Don't go over. This person is full of lies. If you go over, he will get what he wants." The man in white said. Of course, Shun Yu would not go over. It was not that he believed the man in white so easily, but it was not normal for Shun Xingran to come to him for no reason. His relationship with Shun Xingran was not at the level of catching up. Also, Shun Xingran's gaze was crazy when he looked at him. He wanted to get rid of him quickly. Under such circumstances, Shun Yu would not go near him no matter what. There was no need to go near him. "Go and search him," Shang Junlin ordered coldly. Shang Junlin would not take Shin Yu's matter lightly, no matter how small it was. He still remembered that when Shen Yu had a relapse in Sangqi Mountain, someone bumped into Shin Yu. A short touch could induce Shan Yu's relapse. It was very abnormal for Shan Xingran to go near Shan Yu under such circumstances. The imperial bodyguard was very rough. After searching for a while, he found a small pouch in Shan Xingran's arms. "It's just a pouch for powder," Shen Xingran said in a low voice. The imperial bodyguard was about to present the pouch when he was stopped by the man in white. "Don't let this thing go near your Guejun." The imperial bodyguard who was holding the pouch looked at Shang Junlin questioningly. "You stand further away. Take Shun Xingran away and interrogate him." Shang Junlin made the decision almost without thinking. His last hope was dashed. Shun Xingran's face turned ferocious for a moment. He watched as Shunyu was protected in the arms of the handsome emperor like a pearl. Jealousy was like a poisonous snake with long fangs, madly gnawing at his heart. The imperial bodyguard was very strong and did not give him a chance to struggle at all. He was dragged away. Shun Qingran's matter was temporarily solved. The next thing was the sudden appearance of the man in white. Seeing Shun Qingran being taken away, Sir Jinbei found his voice in panic. "Your Majesty, is there any misunderstanding in this matter?" He did not want to plead for Shin Qingran, but once this matter was confirmed, the crime of murdering the Guijun would fall on Sir Jinbei's residence. Judging from how much Shang Junlin cared about Xinyu, the emperor's anger was far from what they could bear. "Sir Jinbei wants to plead for Shin Qingran?" Xinyu turned back from Shang Junlin's arms and looked at Sir Jinbei emotionlessly. "The interrogation results are not out yet, and the matter has not been concluded yet. Sir Jinbei, why are you in such a hurry to plead for Shin Qingran?" His voice was cold, and it was not difficult to hear the sarcasm in it. I just... Sir Jinbei could not say what he was just saying. "If you want to cover up for him, you can accompany Shin Qingran." "Guards, I don't dare." "Your Majesty, please forgive me." Sir Jinbei directly knelt down. "May I know your identity?" Shang Junlin no longer cared about Sir Jinbei and turned to look at the man in white in front of him. The imperial bodyguards surrounded him vigilantly. As long as he made a slight mistake, he would be besieged. The man did not seem to feel the austere atmosphere and turned to face them. "I have been waiting for Shan Yu's arrival at the Yingxing Tower. I couldn't wait for him, so I had to find him myself." "You sent the jade and the note?" Shin Yu asked. "Yes," the man in white admitted bluntly. "I was afraid that you didn't see it, so I specially asked someone to send a message to your personal maid. That day in the suburbs of the capital, you clearly came. Why didn't you show up? The guards around you are too strict. If it wasn't for the fact that I had no other choice, why would I use such a complicated method to see you?" Sir Junbei was taken away, and the three of them continued to talk in another place. Both sides tacitly skipped the means used to lure the other out. Xin Yu and Shang Junlin sat together. The man in white sat opposite them. Behind him stood a man in black who was dressed differently from the people of Dahuan. He followed behind the man in white like a shadow. "This is my..." The man in white paused for a moment. "In the words of Dahuan, he is my secret guard. You don't have to care about him." "Why are you looking for me?" Shun Yu held the teacup and asked. "Because you are my younger brother. I have been looking for you and your mother for a long time. I thought that it would be easy to meet you after I found you, but I didn't expect it to be the most difficult." Shang Junlin had been observing the man opposite him. Apart from other things, the man in white who suddenly appeared looked very similar to Shin Yu. It was the kind of resemblance that could be seen at a glance. However, compared to Shun Yu, his temperament was colder and his facial features were sharper. It was very believable that the two of them were related by blood. "You say you are, but you have to prove it. I am not a 3-year-old child. I am not that easy to fool." Shun Yu laughed. "I think this face is the best proof." The man in white pointed at his chin. "I don't deny that you look very similar to me. Don't be so guarded against your relatives. I am not your father. I will not hurt you. If you want proof, the person your mother left for you should be able to prove it." Shin Yu did not want to dwell on this unsolvable problem. He changed the topic and asked, "Who are you? You said that the thing in Shan Qingran's hand will hurt me. Why?" "I will answer your first question first. I am your brother. My name is Ji Wuwang." The thing in Shan Qingran's hand is a secret medicine developed by the Ji family. It is useless for ordinary people. It is only effective for some members of the Ji family. After being poisoned by this medicine, one will fall into a deep sleep. Their vitality will be slowly depleted in their sleep until they die. Ji Wuwang's voice was filled with obvious emotional fluctuations. "Some people? Why is a you in this group?" Shang Junlin immediately grasped the key point. His health is not good, so he is easily affected. This answer, whether it was Shun Yu or Shang Junlin, did not think it was the truth. "I want to know about my mother." "Your mother left the family very early. No one knows where she went. At that time, I was not in charge of the family. Those people wanted to catch your mother. They sent a lot of people, but in the end, they were all defeated. Later, they seemed to have given up and did not make any moves for a long time. Then how did you find me? I found a way to pry open their mouths. According to the information they provided, I pieced together a clue and came to Dahuan. Ji Wuwang played it down, but the truth was far from that. After he came to power, he almost massacred the entire family. Of course, the method he used to pry open their mouths was not very gentle. In a short conversation, Shunyu did not get much useful information. However, now that there was a person who claimed to be his brother, it was better than having no clue. After such a thing happened, there was no need to continue staying in Zhen Beiho's residence. Before the sky turned dark, Shang Junlin took Shunyu back to the palace. Shen Qingran was also taken away. Zhen Beiho was trembling with fear and did not dare to say a word. So, my mother's surname should be Ji, not Shen. Does Zhen Beiho know about this? Shunyu leaned against the wall of the carriage and recalled Ji Wuwang's words. Probably not. We have been investigating for so long, but we have not found any useful information. It can be seen how deep the secret is. In this life, Ji Wuwang had found him. In his previous life, Ji Wuwang had never appeared in his memories. Was this matter also affected by his rebirth? And the medicine in Shan Qingran's hands, who gave it to him? Mysteries came one after another. Shunyu tried to figure out a clue, but he only led himself deeper and deeper. Shunyu, Your Majesty, how much do you think Ji Wuwang's words are trustworthy? Shang Junlin. No matter how much, since he has appeared, we can follow him to investigate. Shunyu, he seems to have some understanding of my body's condition, but I don't know why he is not willing to say it. Master, why don't you tell little Gongzi everything? After returning to the Yingxing Tower, the black-robed man who had been following Ji Wuwang asked, Because he does not fully trust me. Moreover, I have not found that thing. Even if I told him, it would only add to his troubles. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.